Chapter 253. She sneered and said, "What do you think? Do you want to try?" Luo Jin quickly said, "No. No. Captain Nalan, you misunderstood. We really didn't mean that." After taking a deep breath, he continued, "Captain Nalan, you see, we're old acquaintances. Some time ago, I went to visit old Master Nalan. Can we discuss today's matter? Please be magnanimous and let Qingming go this time. Captain Nalan, don't worry. I will teach this guy a lesson and never let him make the same mistake again." Nalan Wuxia's face softened a little. She said, "Mr. Luo, since you've said so, I'm not a heartless person. I can let go of your son's attack on the police. But the kidnapping has to be approved by the parties involved. If they pursue it, I'll have to arrest them." Luo Jin was also an old fox. How could he not see the intention of Nalan Wuxia's words? That was to say, the decision today was in Qin Haodong's hands. As long as Qin Haodong agreed, it could be settled privately. If Qin Haodong didn't agree, Luo Qingming could only go to prison for 8 or 10 years. After figuring this out, he slapped Luo Qingming in the face again and said, "Little bastard, go apologize to Mr. Qin." Luo Qingming had no choice but to come to Qin Haodong and whisper, "I'm sorry, Mr. Qin. I was wrong this time." Qin Haodong looked at him with a smile and said, "I don't know if you know the law. If you don't, I can explain it to you. Kidnapping is a big crime. You will be sentenced to 7 or 8 years in prison. Plus attacking the police, extortion, and blackmail. Based on your behavior today, even if your family has some power, you will stay in prison for more than 10 years. How can you just say sorry for such a big crime? If saying sorry could be the scapegoat, what would the police do? The police could be laid off." Luo Jin could see that Qin Haodong didn't want to let go of what had happened today easily. He didn't take the Luo family seriously. He had to bow his head under the eaves. He raised his leg and kicked Luo Qingming's butt. "If you want to apologize, you should apologize. Be sincere. Kneel down." Luo Qingming was so aggrieved that he wanted to die. He had tried his best to tie up the kidnapper and then knelt down and apologized to the kidnapper. There was no one else like him. But he also knew that what Qin Haodong said was true. If today's matter couldn't be settled privately, he could only go to jail. "Sorry." Luo Qingming knelt down in front of Qin Haodong, feeling so wrong that he almost cried. He had already cursed 18 generations of Scar's ancestors in his heart. He had asked him to kidnap Qin Haodong, but he turned around and kidnapped the captain of the crime squad. How could he be so stupid? Qin Haodong said, "Get up first. This matter can be discussed." Luo Qingming looked relieved. Since Qin Haodong said so, there was still room for negotiation. No matter how much they had to pay, it was much better than letting Luo Qingming go to prison. Qin Haodong went straight to the sofa and sat down. Then he stretched out his legs and said, "I've been in the sack for too long, so my legs are a little numb." Scar had already seen the situation clearly. He knew that he had caused a big trouble today. The only way to make up for it was to win Qin Haodong's forgiveness. He hurried over and said, "Dr. Qin, I'm really sorry. Let me massage your legs." After that, Scar, who had once been all-powerful in the underworld, squatted down and massaged Qin Haodong's legs. Qin Haodong seemed very satisfied. He nodded and said, "My mouth is a little dry. Is there any tea?" "Yes. Tea. I'll pour it for you." Luo Qingming knelt down. Although he didn't care about his reputation, he rushed over and poured a cup of tea for Qin Haodong. Qin Haodong picked up the teacup and took a sip. Then he said, "This is Dahong Pao. It tastes good." Looking at the young man who was drinking tea and massaging his legs, Luo Jin felt bitter in his heart. He thought to himself, "This is not a hostage, but a living ancestor." He stepped forward and said, "Mr. Qin, how about we settle today's matter privately? Privately. Qin Haodong took another sip of tea and said slowly, "Don't you want my formula?" "Well," Luo Jin said awkwardly, "Mr. Qin, this is all a misunderstanding. But if you are willing to sell it, I'm willing to pay 2 billion yuan for it." Qin Haodong said, 2 billion yuan is a normal price. If you had offered this price earlier, I might have thought about it, but your son only offered 1 million yuan. Now I have signed a cooperation agreement with Lin's group, so I can't sell it even if I want to. Luo Jin glared at Luo Qingming. He really didn't know what Luo Qingming was thinking. He should have negotiated with him himself. Now he didn't buy the formula, and he was covered in sh*t. Let bygones be bygones. Don't worry about it, Mr. Luo. Qin Haodong said, "We can settle today's matter privately, but you have to promise me one thing." Luo Jin said quickly, "Mr. Qin, please tell me what you want. As long as I can do it, I will satisfy you." Qin Haodong didn't rush to say what he wanted. He asked again, "Mr. Luo, how long have you been in the pharmaceutical industry?" "Almost 20 years. Luo Jin didn't know Qin Haodong's intention, so he could only answer truthfully. "How are your contacts in the pharmaceutical industry?" "Not bad." Luo Jin answered carefully. At this time, he heard Luo Qingming say, "Our Luo family has a wide network in the pharmaceutical industry. As long as you can take out the formula and cooperate with us, I guarantee that you will make a lot of money." Luo Jin scolded him in his heart. Qin Haodong had said that he had already cooperated with Lin's group. What was the point of bringing it up now? What had he done before? Besides, Qin Haodong must have asked this question for a reason. Since the Luo family has such great power in the pharmaceutical industry, my request will be easy. Qin Haodong said to Luo Jin with a smile, "Mr. Luo, you know that it's difficult to get approval for medicine now. Lin's group was originally in the jewelry industry and didn't have many contacts in the pharmaceutical industry. As long as Mr. Luo can help me get the approval for the oral solution within 5 days, today's matter will be written off and I won't pursue it anymore." That's impossible. Luo Jin said awkwardly, "Mr. Qin, you know that the approval of a medicine has to go through 3 departments, the city, the province, and the state. 5 days is too short. How about you give me 3 months and I'll help you get the approval?" Qin Haodong smiled and said, 3 months is too long. Mr. Luo just said that with the connections of Luo's group, you can definitely get it done within 5 days. Luo Jin glared at Luo Qingming and said, "Mr. Qin, this is really too difficult. We can't do it in 5 days. How about 1 month? That's the fastest we can do." Qin Haodong said lightly, "Just 5 days. If you can do it in 5 days, your son will be sentenced to 10 years. If you can't, I'll find someone else to do it. Your son can only stay in prison for a while." Well. Luo Jin's face turned purple. He had been in the pharmaceutical industry for so many years that he knew every step very well. Even if he could get the approval within 5 days, he would have to pay a great price. But now the situation was right in front of him. If he didn't agree, his son would go to prison. He would probably be disabled after 10 years. How could he take over Luo's group then? If someone else handled this case, Luo's group would be able to do something with its financial resources. But now it was Nalan Wuxia. With the strength of the Nalan family, there was no loophole for him to take advantage of. Seeing that Luo Jin didn't speak for a long time, Qin Haodong smiled and said, "Mr. Luo, forget it." He turned back to Nalan Wuxia and said, "Since there's no other way, let's call someone to arrest him." "Okay, I'll call someone right now." Nalan Wuxia took out her cell phone and was about to call the officer on duty of the crime squad. Luo Qingming couldn't hold it anymore. He grabbed Luo Jin's arm and cried, "Dad, you must save me. I don't want to go to prison." Luo Jin also realized that this was the best solution. He said to Nalan Wuxia, "Captain Nalan, I agree." Qin Haodong smiled and said, "Mr. Luo, if it's too difficult, don't force yourself." "I won't force myself." Luo Jin gritted his teeth and said, I'll get the approval of the blood revival oral liquid within 5 days. Qin Haodong said, in this case, let's sign an agreement first. If you can't do it in 5 days, we'll have to do business. This was Luo Jin's study, so there was no shortage of paper and pen. Qin Haodong took the pen and paper and wrote an agreement. Mr. Luo, please sign it. Qin Haodong said as he handed 2 copies of the agreement to Luo Jin. Luo Jin took it and read it. It was not an agreement at all. It was Luo Qingming's confession. It clearly stated how he had kidnapped Qin Haodong and Nalan Wuxia and tried to extort the formula of the blood revival oral liquid. As long as he couldn't get the approval of the blood revival oral liquid, Luo Qingming would definitely go to prison. But now, he had no choice but to sign it. He could only bite the bullet and sign his name. Luo Qingming also signed his name below. Qin Haodong found the ink pad and asked them to put their fingerprints on it. Well, it's a pleasure to cooperate with you. Mr. Luo, I'll have the approval materials sent over tomorrow. Then I'll wait for your good news. Qin Haodong put away the agreement and left the Luo's villa happily with Nalan Wuxia's slender waist. After seeing them off, Luo Jin immediately flew into a rage and shouted at Luo Qingming, do you have king brain? How dare you kidnap Nalan Wuxia? Do you want to destroy the Luo family? Luo Qingming said embarrassedly, I only heard that Qin Haodong was with a woman. I didn't know it was the lady of the Nalan family. I wouldn't have done it if I had known. What do you know? I asked you to negotiate, but you used 1 million yuan to buy a formula worth billions of yuan. Do you think everyone is a fool? Now, you're even playing the kidnapping game. Are you kidnapping hostages or something? You're kidnapping a living ancestor. Do you know how difficult it is to get the approval of a medicine within 5 days? How much will our family pay? Although Luo Qingming felt wronged, he knew he was in the wrong, so he didn't say anything. After Luo Jin finished cursing, he took a deep breath and said, tomorrow, I'll personally go through the approval process. You stay at home and don't go out to cause trouble. Especially don't think about getting revenge on that Qin fellow. Right now, our weakness is in their hands. If they move a finger, you'll be sent to prison to eat prison food. Besides, the Nalan family is watching. We can't do anything even if we want to. Luo Qingming was not convinced and said, Father, are we just going to swallow this? A cold light flashed in Luo Jin's eyes and he said in a cold voice, no one can provoke the Luo family without paying the price. But a little impatience will spoil a great plan. Let's get through this first. Chapter 254. Qin Haodong was in a good mood as he walked out of the Lin's villa. He had been worried about the approval of the drug at noon, but Luo Qingming had sent him a big gift in the evening. With the power of Luo's group in the pharmaceutical industry, they would be able to get the approval of the blood revival oral liquid within 5 days. Lin Momo only needed to focus on building the factory. He also knew that the reason why Luo Jin had agreed to his request that day was that Nalan Wuxia was present. He said, thank you for today. Nalan Wuxia said, did you plan this long ago? Did you use me to set up a trap for that idiot Luo Qingming? Qin Haodong said, I don't have that ability. You and Luo Qingming both took the initiative to find me. It was just a coincidence. Anyway, I want to thank you today. Otherwise, it would have been really difficult to get the approval of the blood revival oral liquid. How are you going to thank me? Nalan Wuxia looked at Qin Haodong and asked. Tell me, how do you want me to thank you? As long as you don't sacrifice my beauty. Bah! You're the one who took advantage of me. Nalan Wuxia said, my request is very simple. Just walk back with me. Walk again? We walked all night. Qin Haodong said with a bitter face. He didn't understand why this woman liked to walk so much. Why? You don't want to? Nalan Wuxia said with a serious face. Of course, she didn't like to walk, but she especially liked the feeling of being with Qin Haodong. Yes, I'll do anything you want me to do. Qin Haodong took Nalan Wuxia's little hand and they walked slowly forward under the dim light of the street lamps. Fortunately, Nalan Wuxia's home was not too far from the Luo's villa. The trip ended after an hour. This was a single apartment that Nalan Wuxia rented. Seeing that Qin Haodong continued to follow her into the room, she said, "I'm home. You can go back." Qin Haodong said jokingly, "You've been walking for so long. Don't you want to invite me to your bed to have a rest?" Nalan Wuxia had taken the initiative that night, but now she was embarrassed after being teased by Qin Haodong. That should be the feeling of love. "Let's go. I still have things to do. I'll leave once I'm done." Qin Haodong said it seriously, but it had another meaning in Nalan Wuxia's ears. Countless thoughts popped up in her mind in an instant. If he had something to do, what else could he do? Could it be that he wanted to do that kind of thing with her? If he really brought it up, should she agree? Would he be angry if I refused? If she agreed, would she feel that she was being too casual? In a daze, she took out the key and opened the door. Qin Haodong entered the house, took off his shoes, and grabbed Nalan Wuxia's shoulders with both hands. He looked straight at Nalan Wuxia's flawless face, and then he lowered his head and moved closer to her. Nalan Wuxia was very nervous. She was sure that Qin Haodong wanted to get lost with her. She clutched the corner of her clothes tightly, not knowing whether she should agree or refuse. "No." Just when her voice was squeezed out of her mouth like a mosquito, Qin Haodong's forehead was pressed against hers. Then she felt a boom, and a lot of things appeared in her mind. Then Qin Haodong stepped back without kissing her or other intimate actions, which made Nalan Wuxia feel lost again. "This is my gift to you. It's called Shantian Sutra, and it's 100 times better than your cultivation method." Originally, this set of cultivation method was selected by Qin Haodong for the little fellow. After her Suzaku's sacred body was awakened, this set of cultivation method with En attribute was no longer suitable for her. Now he passed it to Nalan Wuxia by divine thoughts. "Oh. Thank you." Nalan Wuxia finally understood what Qin Haodong was going to do. It turned out that he was going to teach her cultivation method, not to get lost with her. Hurry up and practice. Hurry up and cultivate. I'll help you build a good foundation. Qin Haodong asked Nalan Wuxia to sit cross-legged, put a spirit culturing pill into her mouth, and then helped her cultivate Shantian Sutra. Nalan Wuxia had a certain cultivation foundation. Under Qin Haodong's careful guidance, she quickly completed the first great circle of Shantian Sutra, and her cultivation was suddenly promoted from the 6th level of overt power to the 9th level of overt power. Calm down. Now let's break through the bottleneck of the 9th level of overt power. Then Qin Haodong put another foundation culturing pill into Nalan Wuxia's mouth, and then helped her break through the bottleneck. With the dual help of the elixir and Qin Haodong, Nalan Wuxia felt a boom in her mind after 20 minutes. The genuine qi in her body suddenly changed from a trickle to a surging river. She successfully broke through the bottleneck of the 9th level of overt power, and her momentum was greatly improved, reaching the level of covert power. As a martial arts practitioner, she knew how difficult it was to cultivate covert power, but she didn't expect that she would reach it so quickly with Qin Haodong's help, which made her extremely excited. Qin Haodong said, "Well, you must calm down and consolidate your cultivation. Otherwise, all your efforts will be in vain." Nalan Wuxia also knew this, so she tried to get rid of the distractions in her mind and began to cultivate according to Shantian Sutra. When she opened her eyes again, her cultivation had been completely consolidated. She was a real master of the first level of covert power. At this time, the sky was bright, and Qin Haodong had left. Thinking of the scene of the two of them together last night, Nalan Wuxia felt a burst of sweetness in her heart. She found a new set of clothes and went into the bathroom. Qin Haodong went home and took a nap. The next morning, he came to the Lin's villa. Because it was still early, the little fellow was sleeping soundly. Qin Haodong kissed her little face with a doting expression. Lin Momo asked, "Where did you go last night? Why did you come back so late?" Qin Haodong said with a smile, "I went to find someone to help us get the approval of the blood revival oral liquid." Lin Momo said in surprise, "Really? I was just worrying about this. Who is the friend you found? Why didn't you tell me yesterday?" "Of course it's true," Qin Haodong said. "The person I'm talking about is Luo Jin of Luo's group. He will go through the approval procedures for us today." "You're not being serious again." The smile on Lin Momo's face suddenly disappeared. She glared at Qin Haodong. In her opinion, Qin Haodong was teasing her. "I'm serious. Ask someone to get the things ready when you go to work. Luo Jin will come to pick them up and send them back to us in 5 days." Lin Momo said, "You're getting more and more ridiculous. Luo Jin is the chairman of Luo's group. Our group is his competitor in the pharmaceutical industry. It's good enough that he doesn't make trouble for us. How could he help us with the approval procedures? Besides, I also heard that a new drug needs to be approved by the state, the province, and the city. It will take at least 3 months to get the approval. It's impossible to get it in 5 days." Seeing that Lin Momo didn't believe him, Qin Haodong had no choice but to tell her the whole story of the kidnapping last night. However, he automatically ignored the part where he and Nalan Wuxia were in the same pocket. "Now that we have something on the father and son of the Luo family, they will try their best to go through the procedures for us. Besides, they have been in the pharmaceutical industry for many years and have deep connections. I'm sure they will get the result in 5 days." Then he took out the agreement and gave it to Lin Momo. "Look, they signed it." Lin Momo didn't believe it until she read the agreement. She hugged Qin Haodong excitedly and kissed him hard on the cheek. "Haodong, you're so great. You can solve such a difficult problem. Are there any girls asking you out tonight? Go ahead. I won't stop you." Qin Haodong was speechless. Why did she sound like he was going to sell his body? "Mommy, why did you kiss Papa secretly?" The little fellow had woken up and looked at them with her big cute eyes. Qin Haodong smiled and said, "Mommy can't help kissing Papa because he is so handsome. Just like Papa can't help kissing Tang Tang." Then he held the little fellow in his arms and kissed her again and again. After breakfast, they sent the little fellow to the kindergarten and then went to work in Lin's group together. When they went upstairs, they saw Luo Jin waiting at the door of the president's office. Now he was more anxious than Qin Haodong and Lin Momo about the approval. If it couldn't be done in 5 days, it would be his son who would go to jail. After getting the corresponding procedures, Luo Jin left in a hurry. Lin Momo and Lu Yage began to prepare for the site selection for the factory. Finally, only Qin Haodong came to the infirmary leisurely. During the day, he saw a few patients and flirted with Zhang Jijie. Soon, it was time to get off work. Qin Haodong promised to accompany Qi Wan, to dinner yesterday. This time he didn't dare to forget, or this girl would fight with him. After work, Zhang Jijie left. As soon as the door opened, Qi Wan came in. Today, she wore a floral dress that accentuated her slender figure. Her long hair draped over her shoulders, revealing a kind of intellectual beauty. She looked both pure and sexy. Looking at the beautiful Qi Wan, Qin Haodong secretly sighed in his heart. God was really kind to him. Although he failed to pass the tribulation, he was given a chance to be reborn, accompanied by so many beautiful women. Stop looking. Let's go to dinner. I'm hungry. Qi Wan took Qin Haodong's arm and they left Lin's group together. What do you want to eat? Qin Haodong asked. Seafood. Let's go to Linjiang Tower. The seafood there is good. Qin Haodong didn't expect that Qi Wan, and Nalan Wuxia would make the same request and go to the same place. What's wrong? Is there any problem? Qi Wan asked. No problem. Qin Haodong was familiar with the road and soon arrived at Linjiang Tower. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful. The combination of a handsome man and a beautiful woman could attract countless eyes wherever they went. After entering the door, Qin Haodong was still greeted by the lobby manager, a tall young man. He was slightly surprised when he saw Qin Haodong. It was not because he had come here for dinner for 2 days, but because the beautiful women he brought were different, and they were all the best beauties that men could envy for a lifetime. He was also a man, so he was naturally very envious. "Is there any private room left?" Qin Haodong asked. "I'm sorry, sir. There are too many guests today. There are no private rooms left." The young man had a good attitude and was very talkative. Then he said, "Sir, in fact, our individual tables here are also good, especially the seats by the window. You can also enjoy the beautiful scenery and eat seafood." Qin Haodong looked at Qi Wan. She pointed to a table by the window and said, "This is also good. Let's eat here." Then she walked to the table by the window. Qin Haodong was about to follow her, but the lobby manager grabbed his arm and whispered, "Brother, I will give you a 50% discount today. Can you tell me how you find such a good girlfriend and change one every day? Is there any secret?" Chapter 255. Qin Haodong was amused. This lobby manager was quite interesting. He glanced at his badge and saw the name Zhang Laifu. He laughed and said, "The secret is to be handsome, and then the beautiful girls will chase you." I can't learn that. My appearance is given by my parents. I can't change it even if I want to. But don't worry, I will still give you a 50% discount. Qin Haodong had a good impression of Zhang Laifu. He waved to him and then sat opposite Qi Weiner. "What are you two talking about?" Qi Weiner asked curiously. "Nothing. He asked me for your phone number." "Did you give it to him?" Qi Weiner asked. "Of course I gave it to him. How could I refuse him?" Qi Weiner said discontentedly, "You. How could you give my phone number to someone else?" Qin Haodong laughed and said, "I said I would give it to him, not to you. I left Zhang Tiniu's phone number with him. How can you be so naughty?" Qi Weiner even had the picture of Zhang Laifu calling Zhang Tiniu in her mind. She couldn't help but giggle. Her beautiful face was even more brilliant when she smiled, which made the surrounding male creatures swallow their saliva. They looked at Qin Haodong with jealousy and hatred in their eyes. Soon, a large plate of seafood was served. They ate seafood and drank beer while enjoying the scenery on the river. After a while, the door of the hotel opened and 3 men came in. There were many guests in Riverside Tower. Men were not beautiful women, so they would not attract attention. However, these 3 men were different. One was from Huaxia, and the other 2 were from Neon. One of the Neon people was tall, and the other was short. The taller one was about 1.7 meters with a small braid on the back of his head. The other one was shorter, about 1.6 meters, with a mustache like rabbit poop. The Huaxia man was quite tall. He was 1.8 meters tall, but he kept bowing with a charming smile on his face. He looked even shorter than the Neon man. His subservient appearance, coupled with his shiny parted hair, reminded everyone of the traders in the TV series. Seeing these 3 people, Qin Haodong's expression changed slightly. The 2 short Neon people were warriors, but their levels were not high. They were only at the 5th or 6th level of overt power. "Mr. Sato, Mr. Yagyu, this is the most famous seafood restaurant in Jiangnan. How about having a meal here?" the trader said with a flattering expression. "Good, let's do it here," Sato Junichi said. "All right, I'll go ask them for a private room." After the trader finished speaking, he immediately turned to face Zhang Laifu. This guy seemed to have practiced face changing. After turning around, he straightened his back and looked completely arrogant. "These 2 are distinguished guests from Neon. You must arrange the best private room for them. Zhang Laifu frowned. Like ordinary Huaxia people, he didn't like the two neon people and felt disgusted by this traitor. However, due to his professionalism, he still smiled and said, I'm sorry, sir. We don't have a private room here. If you want to eat, you can sit at the table outside. What? Sit at the table? The traitor leader immediately felt as if he had been greatly insulted and yelled, Do you know who these two are? They are distinguished guests from Japan. How can we sit at the table? Hurry up and find us the best private room. Zhang Laifu said, I'm really sorry, sir. We really don't have a private room here. If you don't mind sitting at the table, you can go to other hotels. What kind of waiter are you? How can you drive out the guests? The traitor cried, Why don't you just drive out the guests in the private room? Are they two distinguished guests from Japan? Zhang Laifu said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, Sir, we really can't do that. Our hotel never divides the guests into different classes. It's the same no matter who comes to eat. If you have to use a private room, you can sit in the rest area next to us and wait for a while. Boy, do you know who you are talking to? How dare you make us wait? You don't want to work anymore, do you? The traitor was not going to let it go. At this time, the Japanese man with the braids said, What the hell is going on? His name was Yagyu Genpakiro and he only knew the simplest Huaxia language, so he didn't understand the conversation between the traitor and Zhang Laifu. The traitor hurried to explain the situation in Neon language. The general meaning was that there were no private rooms left. Yagyu Genpakiro frowned and said, Forget it. Arguing with these lowly Chinas will damage our reputation. Just find a table and sit at any one. Zhang Laifu seemed to understand Yagyu Genpakiro's words. There was a trace of anger on his face, but he finally restrained himself. The traitor turned around and said, You're lucky today. The two distinguished Japanese guests won't argue with you. Just arrange a table for us over there. Zhang Laifu didn't say anything. He directly took them to an empty table not far from Qin Haodong and asked them to sit down. After the three of them sat down, the traitor immediately began to wipe the chairs, the table, the dishes, the wine, and the tea. He was so busy that he was really a good servant. His traitor's face immediately attracted the disdain of the diners around him. Chi Weiner looked at the three of them with disgust and said, It's okay that the Neon people are annoying. But this Huaxia man is annoying. He should have been a good man, but he went to be a dog for others. Qin Haodong shook his head and said helplessly, He's my cousin. It turned out that the traitor was Li Donghai, who was kicked out of Lin's group by Qin Haodong. This guy didn't learn anything else in school, but in order to study neon action movies, he really worked hard on the neon language and could speak foreign language fluently. This time, he had a suitable opportunity to be Yagyu Genpakiro's interpreter. Li Donghai cherished this opportunity very much. He tried his best to please Yagyu Genpakiro and Sato Junichi. He wanted to go to Neon through them, so he had always been flattering them. Because of this, his attention was always on the two Neon people, so he didn't see Qin Haodong not far away. Chi Weiner said in surprise, He's your cousin. What's going on? Qin Haodong sighed and briefly told her about his relationship with Li Donghai. Chi Weiner listened and said, Grandpa Li, how could such a good man have a grandson like this? Qin Haodong said, Who knows? If Grandpa saw him like this, he would be so angry that he would get sick immediately. Chi Weiner shook her head and said, It's really a family misfortune. The two Neon people were enjoying seafood and drinking with Li Donghai's help. They were very happy and soon became a little drunk. Yagyu Genpakiro looked at the beautiful scenery on the river and said, Huaxia is really a good place. It's a pity that it's occupied by inferior Chinese people. In my opinion, only our noble Neon people deserve this land. Sato Junichi said with a lascivious smile, Huaxia men are stupid, but Huaxia women are not bad. I must have a taste of them when I have a chance. Yagyu Genpakiro said, My grandpa used to fight bravely in Huaxia. In the Battle of Nanjing, he was awarded the title of Hundred Killer. It's a pity that we were born too late to catch up with that era. Otherwise, I would have been a national hero. Sato Junichi said, "Don't worry. This day will come sooner or later." This time, our Yagyu family came to Jiangnan to challenge the culture of Huaxia. When we win in culture, we will not be far from military occupation. Yagyu Genpakiro said, "This rich land will belong to our noble Neon people sooner or later. Let's drink to our future." The two Neon people raised their glasses together. Li Donghai had been nodding and bowing beside them with a flattering face, as if he did not understand what they were talking about. At this time, an angry voice came, "You are not welcome here. Get out of here." Yagyu Genpakiro looked in the direction of the voice and saw Zhang Laifu standing in front of their table with an angry face. He said something in Huaxia language and then in Neon language. At first, the diners around did not understand what the two Neon people were talking about. But looking at Zhang Laifu's angry face, they knew that they must have said something bad. "Chinaman, do you know Neon language?" Sato Junichi said in surprise. "Cut the crap. Get out of here now. Get out of our hotel and get out of Huaxia." Not only could Zhang Laifu speak Neon language, but he also spoke it very fluently. He was even more fluent than the traitor Li Donghai. "Boy, are you crazy? Do you know who you are talking to?" Li Donghai stood up. He wanted to show off in front of his master, but he was slapped to the ground by the angry Zhang Laifu. "Bastard, you traitor. Don't you have any shame?" Zhang Laifu shouted angrily, "I really don't know what's in your head. Is it full of shit? These two Neon people insulted Huaxia and called us Chinamen. They shouted that they wanted to take our land and women. How can you laugh? How can you be so thick-skinned? Has your conscience been eaten by a dog?" After listening to Zhang Laifu's words, the diners around finally understood what had happened. It turned out that the two Neon people had been insulting Huaxia people. Suddenly, many diners stood up and denounced the two Neon people and the traitor. "Bastard, are you still a Huaxia person? How dare you be a traitor to the Neon people? Get out of here, you Neon people. Today's Huaxia is not the Huaxia of the past. It's not your place to be so arrogant. Get out of Huaxia. You are not welcome here." Suddenly, the crowd was agitated. The voices of condemnation and shouting became one. Li Donghai was so scared that his face turned pale. He directly hid under the table and did not dare to show his face. "Enough, don't shout anymore." It was Sato Junichi who spoke. His Huaxia language was much better than Yagyu Genpakiro's. Although it was a little stiff, it was still understandable. Could it be that what we said was wrong? You Huaxia people are inferior people. You are the sick men of East Asia. If anyone is not convinced, you can stand up and challenge me. After saying that, the guy raised his hand and slapped the table in front of him. With a crash, the solid wood table was smashed into pieces. The soup and water on the table splashed on Li Donghai's face. Seeing that the Neon person was a martial artist, the voices around them became much quieter. Zhang Laifu shouted, "There is an old saying in Huaxia. It is better to be beaten to death than to be scared to death. Neon, let me see how strong you are." After saying that, he raised his fist and punched at Sato Junichi's face. However, Zhang Laifu was only physically strong. He had never practiced martial arts, not even ordinary sanda or taekwondo. This punch did not pose any threat to Sato Junichi at all. "Sick man of East Asia, how dare you attack our Neon samurai?" Sato Junichi sneered. He raised his hand and grabbed Zhang Laifu's wrist. With a crack, his wrist was broken into two pieces. Chapter 256. Although Zhang Laifu did not know martial arts, he was a tough man. He did not make a sound when his wrist was broken. Then he punched Sato Junichi's jaw with his left hand. "You reckless Chinese man, let's see how long you can hold on." Sato Junichi showed a cruel smile and grabbed Zhang Laifu's left wrist again. He wanted to break both of Zhang Laifu's hands. Another cracking sound rang out, followed by a scream. However, the scream did not come from Zhang Laifu, but from Sato Junichi. At this moment, the bones in his right hand had been broken into two. It was Qin Haodong. He could not stand by and watch the Japanese bully his compatriots on the land of Huaxia. But there were too many onlookers and he was late, so Zhang Laifu's right hand was injured. Naturally, he would not hold back against the Japanese. He gave them a taste of their own medicine and broke Sato Junichi's right hand. Bastard! Sato Junichi did not expect a master to appear out of nowhere. He took a few steps back and stood next to Yagi Genpakiro. Yagi Genpakiro took out a katana and shouted at Qin Haodong, "Who are you? How dare you attack a Japanese samurai?" Qin Haodong looked at him coldly and said, "How dare you call yourself a samurai? As a warrior, you are so cruel to ordinary people. Is this the legendary spirit of the samurai?" Li Donghai got up from the ground. He was as timid as a mouse, but he was different when he saw Qin Haodong. He seemed to know that Qin Haodong would not do anything to him. He immediately stepped forward and shouted, "Qin Haodong, are you crazy? How dare you hit a noble Japanese guest? Kneel down and apologize." Qin Haodong had had enough of his traitor face. He was a disgrace to his grandfather. Qin Haodong said with killing intent, "Get out of here, or I will kill you." More and more onlookers were watching. They hated Li Donghai, the traitor. "Traitor, I'll kill you." At that moment, a middle-aged man beside Li Donghai could no longer hold back his anger. He punched Li Donghai in the face, giving him a panda eye. "How dare you hit me?" Li Donghai wanted to fight back, but before he could finish his sentence, a big crab flew over and smacked him in the face. Then, scallops, shrimps, and beer bottles all came flying at him. "Bastard traitor, get out." Li Donghai knew that he would be beaten to death if he stayed any longer. He could no longer care about his two masters and hurriedly ran out of Riverside Tower. After Li Donghai was driven away, everyone's anger was focused on the two neon people. Kill the Japanese, beat him to death. How dare he behave atrociously in our Huaxia land? Amidst the shouts, the seafood shells once again concentrated on the two Japanese. For a moment, Yagi Genpakiro and Sato Junichi were beaten to a pulp. "Chinaman, I will kill all of you." Yagi Genpakiro flew into a rage out of humiliation. His eyes glowed fiercely as he raised the small katana in his hand. At this moment, a loud shout came from the door, "Stop!" Everyone turned around and saw a neon warrior and a neon woman in a kimono and wooden clogs in the lobby of Riverside Tower. The neon woman bowed to everyone first and apologized in fluent Huaxia language, "I'm sorry, everyone. I apologize." The neon woman's facial features were very delicate and she had a unique beauty of neon women. Plus, she lowered her head and apologized, which eased the atmosphere a lot. After apologizing, the neon woman raised her head and walked quickly to Yagi Genpakiro and Sato Junichi. She changed her gentle image and raised her hand to slap them. "You two, how dare you break the rules and sneak out? You'll be punished when you go back." Yagi Genpakiro and Sato Junichi's cheeks were red and swollen, but they became more respectful. They lowered their heads and said, "Yes, Miss Chiba." The woman in the kimono turned around again and bowed to everyone present. She said in a sweet voice, "Hello, everyone. I'm Chiba Mieko from the Yagyu family in Neon. Please allow me to apologize to you for what my two men did today. Don't worry, I'll punish them severely when I go back." While she was doing this, another neon man had been quietly following her. Although he did not speak, his face was full of arrogance. He was Yagyu Hirai, the young master of the Yagyu family in Neon. Chiba Mieko turned around and stared at Yagi Genpakiro and Sato Junichi. "You two, go back with me." After that, the four neon people were about to leave Riverside Tower. Qin Haodong took a step forward and stood in front of them. He said lightly, "Wait a minute." Chiba Mieko looked at Qin Haodong and said, "What else can I do for you, sir?" Qin Haodong said, "Your two men just publicly insulted Huaxia and hurt my compatriots. Don't you think you're looking down on us Huaxia people?" Yagyu Genpakiro yelled, "You also hurt Sato. What else do you want?" "Shut up. Did I allow you to speak?" Chiba Mieko glared at him and then said to Qin Haodong, "Sir, please forgive us. We didn't know they had hurt you. We're willing to compensate you." Mieko also knows some medical skills, so she can treat the injured. Qin Haodong said, "We don't need compensation. We have our own doctors. You don't need to treat them." Chiba Mieko glanced around and immediately saw that Zhang Laifu was injured. She said, "Sir, you may not know this, but my men's technique is very special. Ordinary doctors can't treat this kind of broken bone. Please let me treat him." "I said it's not necessary. This kind of injury is nothing in Huaxia." Zhang Laifu had been standing by Qin Haodong's side. After that, he grabbed Zhang Laifu's right hand. With a slight force, the broken bones were connected with a crack. Seeing Qin Haodong's skillful movements, Chiba Mieko's pupils shrank. She had not expected that the young man in front of her would have such good medical skills. Zhang Laifu's forehead was sweating and his face was pale. After Qin Haodong's treatment, the pain immediately disappeared and his face returned to normal. "Brother, thank you so much," Zhang Laifu said gratefully. "It's a piece of cake," Qin Haodong said lightly. Chiba Mieko said, "Sir, I really admire your medical skills. Can you tell me what technique you used?" "No." Qin Haodong said coldly, "Huaxia has taught you so many things over the years. What did you get in return?" Yagyu Hirai cried, "Miss Mieko, this Huaxia man is too rude. Besides, with your medical skills, why do you need to ask a Huaxia man for advice? Let's go." Qin Haodong said, "You two can go, but those two can't." Yagyu Hirai said angrily, "Miss Mieko has apologized to you. What else do you want?" Qin Haodong said, "Some things can be forgiven with an apology, but some things can't be solved by an apology. They just insulted Huaxia and hurt my compatriots. They must pay the price." The onlookers also shouted, "Well said. They can't just leave like this after beating our people. If an apology is useful, why do we need the police? Who would believe a bullshit apology? They just insulted Huaxia, you guys have gone too far." Yagyu Hirai was about to lose his temper, but he was stopped by Chiba Mieko. She turned to Qin Haodong and said, "It's indeed their fault today. What do you want them to do?" Qin Haodong said coldly, "As warriors, they attacked ordinary people without permission. One of their hands will be crippled. As long as they cripple their own hands, they can leave here." Chiba Mieko's expression turned cold as she said, "That's impossible. I can't agree to your conditions. They are all warriors. Crippling their hands will ruin their lives. Now you know they are warriors. Why didn't you think of yourself as warriors when you attacked ordinary people?" Qin Haodong said domineeringly, "I'll count to 3. If you don't do it yourself, I'll do it." "Well said, young man. We support you. The Japanese bullied our Huaxia people. We have to teach them a lesson, good wine for the guests, and hunting guns for the wolves. Good job, young man. You can't be polite to the Japanese." For a moment, the crowd was excited, and everyone was on Qin Haodong's side. Yagyu Hirai shouted fiercely, "Don't you dare. No one can offend the dignity of our Japanese warriors." Qin Haodong ignored him and started the countdown. 3, 2, 1. After saying the last word, he flashed and rushed to Sato Junichi and Yagyu Genpakiro. His speed was so fast that before Yagyu Genpakiro could react, his arms were twisted and broken. "Huaxia man, you're courting death." Yagyu Hirai shouted and slapped at Qin Haodong's back. He wanted to rescue Sato Junichi by besieging Wei, but Qin Haodong ignored him. He grabbed Sato Junichi's other hand and twisted it into 2 pieces. Bastard! Yagyu Hirai roared and attacked fiercely. This guy's attack was full of momentum. Obviously, he had entered the threshold of the covert power warrior. But just when his palm was about to touch Qin Haodong's back, a white and tender hand suddenly stretched out and lightly caught the neon warrior's palm. It was Qi Wan, who attacked. She and the neon warrior fought head-on. The 2 people's skills were equal, so they were evenly matched. Baka! The Japanese warrior was shocked. He had always been arrogant, and his cultivation had reached the 3rd level of the covert power. He did not expect that the delicate Qi Wan could take his palm, and she was not inferior to him. At this time, Qin Haodong had disabled Yagyu Genpakiro and Sato Junichi. He turned around and said lightly, "This is a lesson for you. If you dare to insult the Huaxia people again, you will die." Bastard! The Japanese warrior was furious. He was about to pull out the Japanese sword from his waist, but Chiba Mieko stopped him again. "Mr. Yagyu, don't lose sight of the bigger picture. Don't forget what we're here for." The Japanese woman had a good eye. The 2 Huaxia people in front of her were not simple. Yagyu Hirai did not have much chance of winning against Qi Wan. Besides, there was Qin Haodong, who she could not see through. If they fought at this time, they would only humiliate themselves. But Yagyu Hirai did not think so. He thought that Qin Haodong's cultivation was not high if he needed a woman to protect him. He cried, "Miss Mieko, this hateful Huaxia man has hurt our neon warriors. We must teach him a lesson." Chapter 257. Mr. Yagyu, we were in the wrong. These injuries are nothing. I'll cure them. Chiba Mieko turned to Qin Haodong and said, "Sir, what's your name?" Qin Haodong. Chiba Mieko nodded and said, "Mr. Qin, I also know some Huaxia medical skills. If you can cure your friends, I can also cure my subordinates." Her words seemed polite, but they were full of provocation. "Really?" Qin Haodong sneered and said, "You neon people have only learned a little bit of traditional Chinese medicine from Huaxia. It's impossible to cure them." "Mr. Qin, I don't agree with you. Although my medical skills are from Huaxia, the student is better than the master. Besides, traditional Chinese medicine in Huaxia is in decline now. You Huaxia people are guarding the treasures left by your ancestors, but you like to learn things from Westerners. I really don't understand. To put it bluntly, it's impossible to find the essence of traditional Chinese medicine in Huaxia now. You can only come to Neon. If you have time, you can also come to learn from us." Arrogant, self-righteous, the onlookers had a good impression of the seemingly polite Neon woman at first. However, when they heard her words, they immediately lost their good impression and began to denounce her. Qin Haodong said lightly, "You think too much. Although traditional Chinese medicine is in decline now, it's not something you peeping scholars can imagine." Chiba Mieko smiled slightly and seemed to not care about the words of the people around her. She said with great conceit, "To tell you the truth, I'm a member of the cultural exchange group from Neon to Huaxia. From tomorrow on, we will challenge Huaxia's medical skills. If Mr. Qin is interested, you can go and have a look. Then you will know what real traditional Chinese medicine is like." Qin Haodong's expression changed. No wonder so many neon people had suddenly appeared. It turned out that they were members of the cultural exchange group. It seemed that this time, the neon people had a big plan. There were many directions to challenge, including traditional Chinese medicine. He had promised Guofeng to participate in this cultural exchange, so he would probably see this neon woman again. He said, "Okay, I'll definitely go. I'll show you what real Huaxia traditional Chinese medicine is." Chiba Mieko smiled confidently and said nothing. She walked towards Sato Junichi in her wooden clogs. She was going to prove her medical skills to this Huaxia man with practical actions. "Miss Mieko, thank you for your hard work. Sato Junichi lowered his head and said while enduring the pain. Chiba Mieko grabbed his broken wrist and pressed it. Then she pulled and pushed it. With a crack, Sato Junichi screamed like a pig being slaughtered. His wrist was still broken in two, and it was not connected. Seeing everything in front of her, the people around her burst into laughter. It was obvious that the Japanese woman wanted to learn Chin Haodong's bone-setting technique and connect the broken bones as quickly as possible. Obviously, she failed. It turned out that her medical skills were no match for Chin Haodong's. Chiba Mieko frowned slightly. Her confidence and calmness had disappeared. It was obviously a very simple fracture. Why couldn't it be connected? She changed her method and connected Sato Junichi's bones again. The result was the same. Sato Junichi screamed like a pig being slaughtered again, but the broken bones were still not connected. After his wrist was twisted by Chin Haodong, he could barely bear the pain. However, Chiba Mieko couldn't bear the pain anymore. What the hell is going on? Chiba Mieko really couldn't figure out the reason. She changed her method more than a dozen times. Sato Junichi's voice was hoarse, but he still didn't get better. Chin Haodong sneered secretly. This was his unique method. Unless he did it himself, the two neon women could only be disabled for the rest of their lives. Chiba Mieko turned her head and looked at Yagi Genpakiro. Yagi Genpakiro was scared, but he had no choice but to stretch out his arms. As a result, he screamed even more miserably than Sato Junichi. Looking at Chiba Mieko's confused face, Chin Haodong smiled and said, "What do you think? Do you know what it means to be a frog at the bottom of a well? Based on what you've secretly learned, Huaxia traditional Chinese medicine is still far behind." Chiba Mieko looked embarrassed. She took a deep breath and said, "Chin-kun, I admit that I'm not as good as you in bone setting. Please set their broken bones." "Are you mistaken? I've already said that this is their punishment. How could I possibly set their bones?" Chiba Mieko frowned and said, "Chin-kun, haven't your friends been cured? I think this punishment is too heavy for them. It's not good for the friendly relationship between Huaxia and Neon. It's not heavy at all." It was Zhang Laifu who spoke this time. He said indignantly, "Do you know what they just said? They showed off that their grandfather was the one who killed 100 people in the Nanjing massacre. They said that Huaxia is an inferior nation and doesn't deserve this land. They said that you will invade again sooner or later. It would be too merciful to break the arms of such an ambitious person. If it were up to me, I would say that they should be killed immediately. Bastards, kill the neon women. I knew these neon women were up to no good. Get out of Huaxia. You're not welcome here." After Zhang Laifu finished speaking, the crowd became angry again. Facing this situation, Chiba Mieko also looked helpless. She turned to Yagi Genpakiro and Sato Junichi and asked, "Did you say that?" The two immediately lowered their heads. Sato Junichi said in a low voice, "I thought none of them could understand." "Stupid. You deserve to be disabled." Chiba Mieko glared at the two and said to Yagi Hirai, "Let's go." Seeing that the neon women were finally about to leave, the crowd burst into applause. However, at this moment, a middle-aged man fell to the ground with a thump. His face was pale, and he was foaming at the mouth. He looked like he was in pain. It was the middle-aged man who had just punched Li Donghai. A middle-aged woman next to him shouted in panic, "Help! Help him! Is there a doctor?" Then she hurriedly took out her cell phone and began to call the ambulance. Chin Haodong stepped forward and asked, "What happened? Does he have a heart attack?" The woman put away the phone and said in a panic, "Yes, my husband has a serious heart attack. We had an appointment to go to the capital for heart bypass surgery the day after tomorrow. I didn't expect that he would get sick now. Maybe it's because he was too excited just now." Chiba Mieko, who had been about to leave, walked back. She glanced at the man on the ground and said to Chin Haodong, "He has a serious heart attack. He won't be able to hold on until the ambulance arrives. If you can cure my 2 men, I can help him slow down his condition. I'm sure there will be no problem before the ambulance arrives. Then she took out a bag of silver needles. It seemed that she was going to perform acupuncture on the man. Qin Haodong sneered, I told you that what you have learned is just a little bit of traditional Chinese medicine. You are far from being a real traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. I can cure him in minutes. Impossible. That's impossible. The patient's condition is so serious that he needs a bypass surgery. How can he be cured by traditional Chinese medicine? Chiba Mieko looked incredulous. It's impossible in your eyes, but it's not difficult for me. Qin Haodong took out the needle bag from his pocket and said to the middle-aged woman, Sister-in-law, let me try. The middle-aged woman had just seen Qin Haodong's magical medical skills in setting Zhang Laifu's bones. She nodded and said, Brother, please cure my husband. Don't worry. I promise he will be alive and kicking in a few minutes. Qin Haodong had a good impression of this middle-aged man with great integrity. First, he took out a physique-improving pill and fed it to the man. Then, he began to treat the disease with acupuncture. First, he took out a silver needle and pierced it into the middle-aged man's shinshu acupoint. Then, he flicked the end of the needle with his finger. The end of the needle trembled quickly and delivered pure green wood genuine qi to the middle-aged man's heart. The rejuvenative needle was best at repairing damaged tissues and meridians. As the silver needles were inserted one by one, the man's body stopped twitching, and his pale face became ruddy. Amazing, it's amazing. It's the first time I've seen such amazing acupuncture. The onlookers marveled at Qin Haodong's medical skills. The middle-aged woman breathed a sigh of relief and finally felt relieved. Chiba Mieko looked confused. She usually boasted that she was good at all kinds of acupuncture methods, but after watching for a long time, she still couldn't recognize what kind of acupuncture method Qin Haodong had used. 5 minutes later, Qin Haodong had repaired all the clogged blood vessels of the middle-aged man. He took back the silver needles and patted the man's chest again. Okay, get up. The middle-aged man opened his eyes immediately and jumped up from the ground as if he had been poked on a switch. Honey, are you all right? The middle-aged woman took his hand and asked. The middle-aged man waved his fists and shouted excitedly, Honey, I feel so good. I can kill a cow now. Not only had he recovered from his heart disease, but he had also taken a physique-improving pill. Naturally, he felt better. The middle-aged woman said, Honey, you must thank Dr. Qin. He saved your life. The middle-aged man turned around and said gratefully to Qin Haodong, Thank you, little brother. You're welcome. Qin Haodong said, Brother, your heart disease has been completely cured. You don't have to go to the capital for heart bypass surgery. If you don't believe me, you can go to the hospital to do an ultrasound first. The middle-aged man said, I believe you. I believe you, brother. I can feel it myself. I'm in good health now. Seeing that Qin Haodong had really cured a heart disease in a few minutes, Chiba Mieko opened her mouth in surprise. This was beyond her knowledge of medicine. If she had been the one to treat the patient, she would never have been able to achieve such an effect. Qin-kun, can you tell me how you did it? What kind of acupuncture method did you use just now? What medicine did you give this gentleman? Qin Haodong said, The pill is called the physique-improving pill. It doesn't have much direct effect on curing heart disease, but it can strengthen a person's body. As for the acupuncture method I used just now, it is the rejuvenating acupuncture of traditional Chinese medicine. This acupuncture method can repair damaged tissues. In other words, you replaced heart bypass surgery with acupuncture? Chiba Mieko asked excitedly. You can say that. Oh my God, this kind of acupuncture method is amazing. Can I learn from you? Qin Haodong said, Do you really want to learn? Yes, I do. Chiba Mieko nodded desperately. Qin Haodong said jokingly, I won't teach you even if you want to learn. Chiba Mieko said eagerly, Why? Is it because I'm from Neon? Don't you know that medical skills have no national boundaries? Chapter 258. Don't pressure me with those principles. It doesn't work on me. Qin Haodong said, why should I teach you? There's no reason. Do you want to brag that the essence of traditional Chinese medicine is in Neon after you learn it? You've stolen too many things from Huaxia over the years, but you're not grateful at all. You just bite the hand that feeds you. A trace of shame flashed across Chiba Mieko's face. She suddenly felt her cheeks burning. She was the core representative of the Neon cultural delegation to challenge traditional Chinese medicine. That was why she had just confidently shouted that the essence of traditional Chinese medicine was in Neon. She hadn't expected to be slapped in the face in an instant. Not only was her medical skill inferior to Qin Haodong's, but she also didn't even know the acupuncture method. She had been slapped in the face. Let's go. She was too ashamed to stay there any longer. She turned around and hurried out of Riverside Tower. Yagyu Hirai glared at Qin Haodong and followed her with the two Neon people with their arms hanging down. After they went out, they got into a very large limousine. Chiba Mieko said to a person who looked like a secretary in the car, find out about a man named Qin Haodong immediately. Find out where he came from. Seeing Chiba Mieko's serious expression, Yagyu Hirai comforted her, Miss Mieko, you don't have to worry too much. He's just good at bone setting and acupuncture. Traditional Chinese medicine is broad and profound. His overall attainments are definitely not as good as yours. Chiba Mieko breathed a sigh of relief and said, I hope so. If Qin Haodong's overall performance is as good as this, then his challenge of traditional Chinese medicine will be a joke. At that moment, the secretary said, Miss Mieko, I found it. Then she handed over the laptop in her hand. Chiba Mieko looked at the information displayed on the screen. The more she read, the more serious her expression became. A few minutes later, she closed the laptop and closed her eyes. She couldn't calm down for a long time. Yagyu Hirai couldn't help but ask, what's wrong? Is there anything special about this guy? Chiba Mieko's eyelashes trembled slightly as she said word by word, Qin Haodong is known as the medical sage of Huaxia. He has been awarded the title of National Grand Master of Traditional Chinese Medicine by the Huaxia government. He's the youngest National Grand Master of Traditional Chinese Medicine in thousands of years. Yagyu Hirai said, medical sage? Isn't this a little exaggerated? Perhaps this fellow has some background, and his reputation is undeserved. Chiba Mieko continued, not long ago, he cured the tumor in old Maldini's head without surgery. It was a miracle in the history of medicine. A few days ago, he developed a traditional Chinese medicine called the Blood Revival Oral Liquid, which can cure leukemia. I heard that it will be mass-produced soon. Both of these things were heavy bombs, so Yagyu Hirai could no longer say anything. Leukemia was a problem that the whole world could not solve, but it had been solved by such a young man. It was useless for him to say anything now. After a long silence in the limousine, Hirai Yagyu said, Miss Mieko, since we've already issued a challenge, don't think too much about it. Maybe Qin Haodong won't attend this cultural exchange meeting. I hope so. If this person participates, I will definitely lose. It was difficult for Chiba Mieko to say this. She had learned medical skills from her teacher since she was a child. She was a famous genius girl of traditional Chinese medicine in Neon and enjoyed a high reputation. That was why she had taken on the responsibility of challenging traditional Chinese medicine in Celestial Empire. She hadn't expected that she would be overwhelmed before the competition began. She had always been proud and could not accept this. Yagyu Hirai did not speak. As the young master of the Yagyu family, he was the head of the cultural exchange delegation. He would challenge Celestial Empire in 5 aspects: traditional Chinese medicine, Celestial Empire zither, calligraphy and painting, tea ceremony, and antique appraisal. Even if Chiba Mieko failed, it would not have much impact. At the Riverside Tower, Qin Haodong was treated like a hero. The diners in the lobby surrounded him and Chi Wan are like stars around the moon, expressing their inner worship. Under such circumstances, they could not stay any longer, so they left the Riverside Tower directly. After getting in the car, Qin Haodong drove Chi Wan home, while Chi Wan was fiddling with the computer. Did you find out? What's Chiba Mieko's background? Qin Haodong asked. Yes. She is from the Chiba family in Neon. She has studied traditional Chinese medicine with Chiba Fenghua since she was a child. She is known as the genius girl of Neon. Qin Haodong asked, who is Chiba Fenghua? Where did he learn traditional Chinese medicine? Chi Wan said, Chiba Fenghua participated in the invasion of Celestial Empire in the last century. After he was injured, he was treated at the home of an old Chinese medicine practitioner. Before he was cured, Neon announced its defeat and surrendered. Chiba Fenghua did not return to the army. He followed the old Chinese medicine practitioner as an apprentice. After studying for 10 years, he returned to Neon and brought traditional Chinese medicine back with him. Qin Haodong frowned and said, these Neon people really have no conscience. They have been helped by Celestial Empire and learned traditional Chinese medicine. Not only do they not want to repay us, but they also come back to provoke us. Chi Wan said, Neon people have always been like this. At first, they lived like savages on that small island. Later, they learned weaving, iron making, farming and other skills in Celestial Empire. When they finished learning, the first thing they did was to start a war. Qin Haodong said, check again. What is the purpose of this cultural exchange held by the Neon people? Chi Wan's fingers were jumping on the computer keyboard. After a while, she said, the general situation is like this. This cultural exchange is a folk activity. The initiator of the Neon people is the Yagyu family. Their purpose is to attack Celestial Empire from a spiritual level. This is the usual trick of the Neon people. Before the last war, they sent a large number of warriors to challenge the martial arts of Celestial Empire. The purpose is to attack the confidence of the Celestial Empire people. It seems that these Neon people are still not giving up. Qin Haodong said with a sneer, since they are here, let them see how big the gap between them and Celestial Empire is. After driving Chi Wan back to Daddy's security company, Qin Haodong drove back, thinking about the exchange while driving. It was almost midnight, and there were fewer and fewer people on the street. He drove very fast. Suddenly, he faintly heard a cry for help. He looked up and saw that on the side of the road 400 or 500 meters away, 2 punks were dragging a young woman to the nearby bushes. The woman struggled desperately, but how could a weak woman be a match for 2 strong men? Soon, her mouth was blocked by one of the punks, and she could only make a whining sound. Qin Haodong's face was cold, and his whole body was full of killing intent. He had already seen that the woman being torn by the punks was his sister, Wang Rubing. He suddenly stepped on the ground, and the Lamborghini Centenario, like an arrow leaving the bow, rushed to the scene of the accident, and stopped with a harsh breaking sound. Seeing Qin Haodong jump out of the car, a punk with a hairstyle took out a spring knife from his waist and shouted fiercely, boy, do you want to die? Get out of here if you want to die. Don't hinder me from having fun. Get out of here if you want to die. Don't hinder me from having fun. As soon as he finished speaking, before he could see what was going on, Qin Haodong had already come to his side, and then there was a sharp pain between his legs. There was a sharp pain, and amidst the sound of an egg breaking, the punk was directly sent flying. The other punk, who was controlling Wang Rubing, was shocked. He originally wanted to pull out the knife from his waist and take Wang Rubing as a hostage, but as soon as his hand touched the handle of the knife, his whole body flew out, and 4 or 5 ribs were broken in the sound of cracking. The two immediately realized that they had met a tough character. Regardless of the pain, they got up from the ground and fled. Qin Haodong did not chase them again. He had just used his hidden strength to cut off the heart meridians of the 2 people, and it would take a few days for them to die of a heart attack. He turned back to Wang Rubing and said with concern, Sister, how are you? Are you okay? Wang Rubing's hair was messy, and her silk skirt had been torn by the two punks, and a large area of her snow-white skin was exposed. She threw herself into Qin Haodong's arms and burst into tears. As a girl who had just graduated, she had been completely scared just now. She thought that her life was over. Fortunately, Qin Haodong appeared in time. Qin Haodong patted her on the back and comforted her. Sister, don't cry. I've cleaned up those two bastards for you. Wang Rubing just kept crying, and her tears wetted Qin Haodong's chest. She didn't raise her head until she had cried enough. Qin Haodong said, Sister, your clothes are torn. I'll take you to buy one. No, I've brought it. Wang Rubing wiped her tears and found a suitcase from the nearby bushes, which had just been thrown in by the punks. She opened the suitcase, took out a long skirt from it, and changed her clothes in the bushes. After coming out with the suitcase again, Qin Haodong asked in surprise, Sister, why are you carrying the suitcase in the middle of the night? Do you want to go home on vacation? Wang Rubing said, No. No. I just came out of the hotel. Hotel? What are you doing in the hotel? Don't tell me you went on a date. Qin Haodong became more and more confused. It was not far from Wang Rubing's home. Why did she leave her home and go to the hotel? What the hell? Have you ever seen a date with a suitcase? Wang Rubing's mood had been much better, and she slowly returned to her usual style of doing things. Then what are you doing? Renovating your home? No, the house has just been renovated. It's very good. There's someone at my home. I can't go back, Qin Haodong said angrily. Someone? Who? Who went to your home? Is it that damn landlord? Let's go back now. I'll break his legs. No, not the landlord. Wang Rubing hesitated and said, It's Li Donghai. What, that bastard? Why did he go to your home? Qin Haodong asked in confusion. Wang Rubing took Qin Haodong to sit on a bench next to her and told him what had happened from beginning to end. It turned out that 10 days ago, Li Donghai suddenly called Wang Rubing and said that he had lost his job in Jiangnan and needed to borrow some money from her. Anyway, Li Donghai was Wang Rubing's cousin. Wang Rubing not only invited him to dinner, but also gave him 2,000 yuan of the only 3,000 yuan she had. Unexpectedly, the story of Mr. Donghua and the wolf happened again. Li Donghai heard that Wang Rubing had her own house while chatting, so he first said that he would go to her home to have a look. Unexpectedly, after arriving, he refused to leave, saying that he had no house to live in and would live with her for a while. Wang Rubing said, The house has 1 bedroom and 1 living room. I could have lived on the sofa, but I always felt that the way he looked at me was not right. I didn't feel safe with him, so I had to find a hotel. I thought he would leave after staying for a few days, but who knew that after 10 days, this guy didn't seem to have any intention of leaving. My money was quickly used up after eating and staying outside, and I didn't dare to call my mother for money. I was just chased out of the hotel, and then I met those 2 hooligans. Qin Haodong was furious when he heard that. It was really a good person being bullied. Wasn't it like a dove occupying a magpie's nest? Chapter 259. Let's go. I'll send you back now and get rid of that bastard. Qin Haodong was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Wang Rubing was in danger tonight because Li Donghai had occupied the house. If he hadn't happened to be there, this bastard wouldn't be able to make up for the harm he had done to Wang Rubing even if he died 10,000 times. It's already midnight. It's not a good time to go back now. Why don't we go tomorrow? Wang Rubing said with some hesitation. Why? You have to get rid of him now. That's your house. In fact, it was not a big deal to take Wang Rubing back to his house for a night. The point was that Qin Haodong couldn't vent his anger. All right then. Wang Rubing took her suitcase and got into Qin Haodong's car. They rushed to her house together. When they arrived home, Wang Rubing opened the door with the key. As soon as she entered the house, a strange smell came. She turned on the light and saw that the living room was full of all kinds of garbage. There were fast food boxes, cigarette butts, drink bottles, and all kinds of food residue. It was just like a garbage dump. She was a very clean girl. The house had been clean since she moved in. She didn't expect that it would be ruined by Li Donghai in just a dozen days. This bastard. Seeing the scene in front of her, Wang Rubing was also angry. She was about to open the bedroom door to get even with Li Donghai, but Qin Haodong stopped her. His six senses were sharp. At this time, he had already heard strange sounds coming from the bedroom. It was obvious that someone was doing sports that were not suitable for children. Li Donghai had brought a dubious woman here. "You wait for me here," Qin Haodong said as he walked to the bedroom. After pushing the door open, he directly pulled the quilt over the two people who were busy on the bed. Then, he punched and kicked them crazily to vent his anger. Although he did not use his inner strength, the two people on the bed were crying for their parents and howling in pain. Li Donghai cried, "Brother, I was wrong. Please let me go." The woman cried and cried, "Honey, forgive me. I won't dare to do it again." It turned out that Li Donghai had found a married woman to have an affair here. Qin Haodong vented enough and said, "You two put on your clothes and get out of here." After that, he returned to the living room. At this time, although Wang Rubing did not enter the room, she knew what had happened. She was so angry that she trembled. She did not expect that Li Donghai would do such a dirty thing in her home. A few minutes later, Li Donghai and a woman came out of the house. Both of them were beaten black and blue. If Wang Rubing hadn't known that it was Li Donghai who lived here, she wouldn't have been able to recognize who he was. Li Donghai went out and saw the two men. When he saw that they were not women's husbands, he immediately became tough and said angrily, "Qin Haodong, what are you doing? Why did you hit me?" Qin Haodong said coldly, "This is the house I bought for my sister. It's not your turn to live in it. Get out of here." Li Donghai said, "I don't care who bought it. This is Rubing's house. She didn't kick me out. Why would you kick me out?" Wang Rubing said angrily, "Li Donghai, you're too shameless. Look at what you've done to my house. You're not welcome here. Get out of here with this rotten woman." Little b asterisk tch, who are you calling a rotten woman? The woman was so scared that she almost peed her pants. She was so angry that she vented all her anger on Wang Rubing. She even rushed at her with her teeth and claws. But before she could touch Wang Rubing, Qin Haodong kicked her in the lower abdomen. She flew out and hit the wall behind her. "If you dare touch my sister, I'll kill you now." Qin Haodong was so angry that he had met two shameless people. They occupied the house and even wanted to beat the owner. If it weren't for his grandparents, he would have killed them. The woman fell to the ground and hurt like a shrimp. She struggled to get up, grabbed Li Donghai's arm and cried, "Honey, he hit me. Take revenge for me." Li Donghai knew that Qin Haodong couldn't do anything to him for the sake of his grandparents, so he had always been fearless. But he didn't have the guts to hit Qin Haodong. He cried out fiercely, "Qin Haodong, why did you hit me?" Qin Haodong said coldly, "I'll give you 2 minutes to get out of here, or I'll throw you two down the stairs." Li Donghai said to Wang Rubing, "Sister, it's so late today. Let us stay here for one more night. I'll definitely move out tomorrow." Qin Haodong knew that he couldn't give such a wicked person a chance. He refused immediately, "No. Only 2 minutes. Get out of here." Li Donghai said unhappily, "Rubing and I are cousins. We're related by blood. What does it have to do with you?" Qin Haodong said coldly, "You have 1 minute." Li Donghai knew that he couldn't make it today. He took the woman's hand and began to pack up. Before they went out, he said provocatively, "Can you stay here all the time? I'll come back after you leave." This reminded Qin Haodong that if he didn't take some measures, this guy would definitely come to bother Wang Rubing tomorrow. Qin Haodong reached out his right hand and drew in the air a few times. Then he pointed at Li Donghai and a yellow light went into his mudpill palace. Li Donghai was shocked and said in horror, "What did you do to me?" Qin Haodong said, "Remember not to come within 100 meters of this place in the future, or you'll suffer." "You're bluffing. Who are you trying to scare?" Li Donghai's head suddenly hurt as soon as he finished speaking. The pain was so terrible that it felt like it was going to explode. Qin Haodong sneered and said, "How do you feel? Does it feel good?" When he was traveling around in the cultivation world, he once lived in a temple for half a month. The abbot of the temple was called Master Yuanjin. He was a very interesting senior monk. At that time, there were often wild dogs around the temple and they bit the pilgrims in the temple from time to time. Although Master Yuanjin's cultivation was very high, he was not allowed to kill. Later, he came up with a way to develop a talisman called the dog-repelling charm. When this talisman was used on the wild dogs, they would have a splitting headache once they were within 100 meters of the place where the talisman was used. It was very effective. Moreover, the level of this talisman was very low. As long as one reached the foundation realm, he could draw talismans in the air. It was also convenient to use. At that time, Qin Haodong felt that this method was very interesting, so he learned it. Today, it came in handy. He put a talisman on each of Li Donghai and the woman. Li Donghai didn't even have the strength to speak now. He took the woman and ran away in a panic. When they were 100 meters away, he found that his head was magically fine. He took a deep breath and tried to take 2 steps back. Once he was within 100 meters, his head immediately exploded with a splitting pain. This time, Li Donghai completely gave up the idea of coming back. He turned back and scolded, "Qin Haodong, wait for me. I'll make you pay sooner or later." After driving the 2 people away, Qin Haodong said with a smile, "That's great. He won't come back even if I give him money." "How did you do that?" Wang Rubing asked in surprise. "It's just a little trick. Don't worry about him." Qin Haodong and Wang Rubing cleaned up the room together. Then, they threw a bank card with more than 1 million yuan in it and left. The next morning, he went to the Jiangnan Cultural Exchange Center. Guofeng had called him every day these days, so he couldn't forget it even if he wanted to. There were so many people attending the cultural exchange that the parking lot was full. Qin Haodong walked around and finally saw a car leaving the parking space. He quickly parked his car. However, as soon as he got out of the car, a Mercedes-Benz MPV drove over. A young man who looked like an assistant jumped out of the car and said to Qin Haodong arrogantly, "Drive your car away and give up the parking space." Qin Haodong glanced at him and asked, "Why?" The assistant said, "This parking space is reserved for President Lang. Now that President Lang is here, you must give it up immediately." Qin Haodong said, "Do you think I'm uneducated? Why is there no sign of the reserved parking space? Besides, there was a car here just now. I parked it after he left. How could it be a reserved parking space?" The assistant was bluffing. Seeing that Qin Haodong's words were reasonable, he was at a loss for words for a while, but he still said, "Don't think you're great because you're driving a good car. If President Lang's cultural exchange is delayed, you can't afford to bear the responsibility." Qin Haodong didn't want to talk nonsense with this kind of person. He shook his head and went straight to the gate. The assistant was so angry that he glared, but there was nothing he could do. He could only continue to drive to find a parking space. A middle-aged man in his 40s in the car glanced at Qin Haodong with dissatisfaction in his eyes. After entering the gate of the venue, Guofeng was talking to Gao Fengwen. When they saw Qin Haodong, they immediately greeted him. Guofeng took Qin Haodong's hand and said, "Brother Qin, you're here. If you hadn't come, I wouldn't have felt confident." Gao Fengwen also said, "Yes, Dr. Qin. Now that you're here, our Chinese Medicine Practitioner Association will be more confident. I called you several times a few days ago, but I couldn't get through. Later, I heard from President Guo that he had invited you. I've been waiting for you here. Qin Haodong said, the Japanese came to provoke us. As a member of Huaxia, it's my duty to do what I can. Gao Fengwen said, Dr. Qin, our people are all here. Let me introduce them to you. After that, he and Guo Feng accompanied Qin Haodong to the rostrum. The people present were very surprised. They didn't know who this young man was and why Gao Fengwen and Guo Feng, who had always been respected, valued him so much. There were 6 chairs on the rostrum. At this time, 3 people were already sitting. One was a white-haired old man in his 60s, one was a middle-aged man in his 40s, and the other was a beautiful woman in her 20s. Qin Haodong was surrounded by beautiful women. He had seen many beautiful women, but this woman had a unique temperament. She sat there like a bowl of light tea, giving people a very quiet feeling. At this time, Gao Fengwen said, everyone, let me introduce you. This is Qin Haodong, the medical sage I mentioned to you. It turned out that this cultural exchange was completely a folk activity. The Yagyu family had sent a letter of challenge to the Chinese Medicine Practitioner Association, the Antique Association, the Music Association, the Calligraphy and Painting Association, and the Tea Ceremony Association in Jiangnan City. Finally, the leaders of these associations got together and set up a temporary group for this cultural exchange. Gao Fengwen was elected as the group leader because he was highly respected. The presidents of the other associations were members of the group. At the same time, under the recommendation of Gao Fengwen and Guo Feng, Qin Haodong, who was not present, was also included in the group. At this time, the middle-aged man in his 40s said, I didn't expect that the person recommended by President Gao and President Guo would be so young. Is he a rich son of a rich family? Chapter 260. Qin Haodong was slightly surprised. The middle-aged man seemed to have a strong opinion of him, but he didn't remember seeing this person. But then he saw the assistant standing behind the middle-aged man and immediately understood what was going on. It turned out that the middle-aged man was President Lang, who was sitting in the Mercedes-Benz MPV. He couldn't help but laugh in his heart. To be so narrow-minded just because of a parking space, it seemed that President Lang's magnanimity was a little too small. Gao Fengwen said, President Lang, you're wrong this time. Dr. Qin is a really capable person. At least in terms of traditional Chinese medicine, I can't catch up with him. Even 100 Gao Fengwens can't compare with Qin Haodong. Otherwise, he wouldn't be called the medical sage. Guo Feng also said, Brother Qin is really a rare talent. I still have to rely on him to help me in antique appraisal. Seeing that Gao Fengwen and Guo Feng admired Qin Haodong so much, the middle-aged man snorted and said nothing. Gao Fengwen then said to Qin Haodong, Dr. Qin, let me introduce you to Lang Sanyuan, the president of our music association. He's the best in music in Jiangnan City. Lang Sanyuan snorted again and then turned his head without saying anything. Qin Haodong smiled and didn't care. It seemed that Lang Sanyuan thought highly of himself, but in Qin Haodong's eyes, he was really a nobody. Next, Gao Fengwen introduced the beautiful woman to Qin Haodong. This is Miss Hua Mingrui, the president of our Jiangnan Tea Ceremony Association. She's very talented in the tea ceremony. Everyone calls her the tea fairy. Hua Mingrui stood up and glanced at Qin Haodong with great interest. Then she stretched out her white and tender hand and said, I've heard about the medical sage for a long time. I heard that you cured old Maldini's brain tumor without surgery. It's really amazing. I admire you. You're welcome, Miss Hua. Qin Haodong reached out and shook hands with Hua Mingrui gently. She deserved to be called the tea fairy. Her tranquil temperament really made people feel very comfortable. Finally, Gao Fengwen introduced the old man to Qin Haodong. This is Mr. Tang Qingji, the president of the Jiangnan Calligraphy and Painting Association. He is also one of the famous painters in Huaxia. The old man's eyes were full of appreciation when he saw Qin Haodong. He said enthusiastically, I'm a good friend of President Guo. He told me that Brother Qin copied the painting of lotus of the art sage Wu Daozi on the spot. The younger generation will surpass the older. If there's a chance, please show me. Qin Haodong said humbly, "Thank you, Mr. Tang." After exchanging pleasantries, everyone took their seats. The exhibition center was a semicircular venue that could accommodate nearly 1,000 spectators. The delegation from Huaxia sat on the left side of the rostrum, while the delegation from Neon sat on the right. Hirai Yagyu and Chiba Mieko had also arrived with their people. At 9:00 in the morning, the cultural exchange officially began. After the host took the microphone to the stage, Qin Haodong was slightly stunned. It turned out to be the president of the Jewelry Association, Qian Duo. Guofeng explained, "Old Qian doesn't like to be left out, and he speaks Japanese very well. This cultural exchange has nothing to do with jewelry and jade, so he volunteered to be the host." Qian Duo was really eloquent. After making a beautiful opening speech, he said, "Huaxia is a country of etiquette. We always put guests first. Now, let's welcome Mr. Hirai Yagyu, the head of the Neon Cultural Delegation, to come on stage to speak." Amid a burst of applause, Hirai Yagyu, who was dressed in neon clothing, went on stage. He first bowed to the audience and then said, "Hello, friends from Huaxia. I'm Hirai Yagyu. Everyone knows that Huaxia used to have a brilliant civilization. It was one of the 4 ancient civilizations in the world. However, to be honest, today's Huaxia people are not very good at inheriting ancient culture. Some things have even been lost. We Neon people have always paid attention to learning. I think we have surpassed Huaxia in many aspects of ancient culture." At this point, there was an uproar. No one had expected that the Neon man's speech on stage would be a blatant provocation. For a moment, there were shouts and protests. Hirai Yagyu just smiled coldly and was not moved at all. He continued, "I know that many people don't agree with what I just said, so we have this cultural exchange. It is a cultural exchange and a challenge to the ancient culture of Huaxia. If we lose in the end, I will publicly apologize to Huaxia with all the members of the Neon delegation." After that, he bowed deeply again. It seemed that he was polite, but in fact, he was arrogant and walked off the stage. The Neon people are so arrogant. They are overestimating themselves, they are shameless. Didn't they learn those things from Huaxia? How dare they come back to challenge us? However, someone sighed and said, "It's not their fault. Huaxia has been a little disappointing in recent years. I heard that traditional Chinese medicine in Neon is developing better than ours." While everyone was talking, the representative of Huaxia, Mr. Gao Fengwen, went on stage. "My fellow compatriots, my name is Gao Fengwen. Thank you for your respect. I will say a few words on behalf of Huaxia. Mr. Hirai Yagyu just said that our culture has declined. Indeed, I admit that we have not been very good at inheriting ancient culture over the years." Speaking of this, he suddenly changed the topic and said sonorously, "But what I want to say is that even if the inheritance of ancient culture in Huaxia is not as good as it used to be, it is not something that anyone can challenge." At this point, there was a sudden burst of warm applause from the audience. After the applause subsided, Zhang Fengwen continued, "Take traditional Chinese medicine as an example. Traditional Chinese medicine belongs to Huaxia people. Although a lot of people have learned it over the years, its roots are still in Huaxia. Facts speak louder than words. You may have heard that a few days ago, Qin Haodong, the medical sage of Jiangnan City, successfully developed the blood revival oral liquid, which can completely cure leukemia. This is not only a blessing for more than 4 million leukemia patients in Huaxia, but also a sign of the rise of traditional Chinese medicine. I believe that from now on, traditional Chinese medicine in Huaxia will get better and reproduce our glory in the past." Gao Fengwen's impassioned words ignited the passion of all the Huaxia people. There was another burst of warm applause and cheers from the audience. Qian Duo stepped onto the stage again and said happily, "Just now, the leaders of both sides made a speech about whether Jiangnan City is the best or Neon is better in the inheritance of ancient culture. It will be shown soon. Please wait and see. As a Huaxia person, his words were very particular. He defined Huaxia as Jiangnan City. Even if they lost, there was still room for negotiation. After all, Jiangnan City was Jiangnan City. Although the cultural inheritance was very complete, it could not represent the whole of Huaxia. Then he continued, the order of this exchange meeting was proposed by the Neon delegation. The first item is the tea ceremony exchange. The rules of the exchange are that each side will send a representative who is proficient in the tea ceremony. If the representative of one side fails, he can admit defeat on the spot or send another representative. This is limited to 3 times. That is to say, if the third representative of one side fails, the project will fail. We have organized 10 judges who are proficient in the tea ceremony on the spot. In order to ensure fairness, we have prepared 20 cups with different numbers. The contestants of each side will pour their tea into 10 cups without any rules. Our staff will register the number on the spot. Then, each judge will taste 2 cups of tea from different contestants and choose the best one. Qin Haodong nodded secretly. He had to say that this method was the fairest. The judges only knew the number of the teacup. They did not know which side the contestants were from. They could not be partial even if they wanted to. After reading the rules, Qian Duo invited the contestants of both sides to the stage. On the Huaxia side, it was Hua Mingrui, the president of the Tea Ceremony Association. On the Neon side, there was also a beautiful woman in a kimono. She was Ai Yagyu from the Yagyu family. The 2 beautiful women immediately ignited the enthusiasm of the audience when they came on the stage. Interestingly, the 2 beautiful women had unique titles. Hua Mingrui was called the Tea Fairy, while Ai Yagyu was a famous tea sage in Neon. Ai Yagyu's hair was tied up and her skin was as white as snow. She looked even more charming in a kimono. Hua Mingrui was wearing a black silk cheongsam. Her curves were exquisite and her temperament was elegant. When the 2 women walked together, they each had their own charm. However, Ai Yagyu had a pair of phoenix eyes and a black mole on her left lip. According to Huaxia's ancient physiognomy, this kind of woman was scheming and mean. The staff had already set up 2 tea tables on the stage. After getting on the stage, Ai Yagyu sat down at her table. She glanced at Hua Mingrui opposite her and said, "You can't compare with me. I have a title in Neon called the Tea Sage." Hua Mingrui smiled faintly and said, "I'm sorry, I don't know about such a small place. I only know that there is a medical sage in Huaxia, but I have never heard of the tea sage." The 2 of them bickered on the stage before the tea ceremony. The audience felt that it was interesting and watched with great interest. Qin Haodong understood what was going on. Whether it was martial arts or tea ceremony, the battle between masters was about the state of mind. If one state of mind was disturbed, one would lose without a doubt. Ai Yagyu wanted to disturb Hua Mingrui's state of mind. However, Hua Mingrui was not an easy person to get along with, and her counterattack was extremely sharp. Ai Yagyu said, "I know about you before. You are the president of the Jiangnan Tea Ceremony Association. I heard that you also have the title of Tea Fairy. However, there are many unspoken rules in all walks of life in Huaxia. I don't know if you got this title because of your strength or because you slept with a man." Her words were even more aggressive. She had been polite before, but this sentence was a bit of a personal attack. Hua Mingrui was still unmoved. She said quietly, "Miss Yagyu is wrong. Even if you want to sleep with a man, you have to be strong. For example, although your face is not bad, your waist is a little thick and your chest is not big enough. In Neon, there may be men who treat you as a female tea sage, but there is absolutely no market in Huaxia." Qin Haodong almost laughed out loud. He did not expect that Hua Mingrui, who looked like a floating fairy, would not be at a disadvantage in a fight. It seemed that the trick of the Neon woman was going to fail. "You." Ai Yagyu's face changed, and then she said, "You Huaxia people can only win with words. Let's see what we can do. Hua Mingrui said lightly, that's for the best. The two women stopped talking and began to make tea with the tea set in front of them. The tea set was the same, and the tea leaves provided by the competition were exactly the same. Even the water used to make the tea came from the same bucket. What was tested was their attainments in the tea ceremony. Like martial arts, the tea ceremony was one of the ancient cultures of Huaxia. It had been passed down for thousands of years and had many schools and techniques. The tea made in different ways was completely different. There was a great difference in fragrance, taste, and color. A good tea-making technique could bring out the fragrance of the tea to the extreme, making the person who drank the tea feel refreshed and greatly nourished. When the water boiled, Aya Yagyu looked at Hua Mingrui provocatively and began her tea ceremony. Chapter 261. The tea ceremony was the first competition of the cultural exchange between the two sides. In order to win a good start, both sides sent out their strongest forces. Yagyu Ai and Hua Mingrui did not hold back after they got on the stage. They prepared the utensils, warmed the teapot, baked the tea, poured the tea, shook the teapot, and poured the tea. Their movements were smooth, showing their extraordinary attainments in the tea ceremony. Gao Fengwen, who was watching from below the stage, repeatedly nodded and said, "Not bad. Not bad." Qin Haodong said, "Is Mr. Gao also good at the tea ceremony?" "I can't say I'm good at it, but I like to make a cup of tea myself. I also have some understanding of the tea ceremony." Gao Fengwen started to talk and said, "Generally speaking, the Huaxia tea ceremony is divided into 3 realms. The first realm is to have good color and fragrance. I can barely achieve this realm. The color and fragrance of the tea will reach a certain level, which will make the tea taste pleasing to the eye. The tea ceremony sounds simple, but it requires a deep understanding of the tea leaves, the amount of water, and the condition of the tea set. It takes at least a few years of hard work to achieve this." Qin Haodong nodded slightly. Tea was known as the leader of all herbs and the flower of all trees. As the Emperor Greenwood, no one was more proficient in the tea ceremony than him. However, his tea ceremony was accomplished in the cultivation world, so he was not too clear about the level of tea ceremony on Earth. Gao Fengwen didn't know that he was facing a tea ceremony master. He continued, "The second realm, return to simplicity. Now the two people on the stage have reached this realm." The so-called returning to simplicity meant that when making tea, one would no longer need to show off one's skills. Instead, one would need to integrate the skills of the tea ceremony into one's bones, allowing the tea's most essential flavor to be emitted. Only in this way could one brew the purest tea aroma. Not simple, to be able to reach the second realm at such a young age. Without more than 10 years of hard work and talent, it's absolutely impossible to achieve this. Qin Haodong asked, "In Mr. Gao's opinion, who will win?" Gao Fengwen said, "Although I personally don't like neon, I have to say that this neon woman's tea art has reached a certain level. She and the tea fairy are both in the second realm of the tea ceremony. This game is likely to be a draw. If anyone is able to reach the third level of the way of tea, or even touch the threshold, then this round will be a sure win." Qin Haodong asked, "What is the third realm of tea ceremony that Mr. Gao mentioned?" "As far as I know, the third realm of the tea ceremony is called fragrance pervading the field." As the name suggested, the tea brewed by a person who had reached this level could have its fragrance spread for thousands of meters without dissipating for a long time. As the name implies, the tea made by the people on the stage, the tea made by people on the stage can have a drink. While the two of them were talking, the tea on the stage had already been brewed. 10 numbered cups were poured into them. After the staff registered the cups, they were distributed to the 10 judges below the stage to taste. The 10 judges were also hand-picked tea ceremony experts. Each time they picked up a cup, they would slowly taste it. Sometimes they would shake their heads, sometimes they would nod. Finally, they would write down the number they chose. Soon, the results came out. Hua Mingrui and Ai Yagyu each got 5 votes. As Gao Fengwen said, it was a tie. Either 2 Hua and A and, or, and had. Fairy, and, Ito say, and to the back. And. S, and to. Yao, and. Fairy. No matter whether Ai won or lost, she represented the highest level of the way of tea in Neon. It was impossible to find a second person. However, they could accept the result. After all, the way of tea originated in Huaxia and was introduced to Neon. It was a shame to have a tie with Huaxia. Qian Duo looked at Gao Fengwen and asked, Mr. Gao, is there anyone else who wants to challenge Miss Ai? Gao Fengwen sighed in his heart. A tie was a disgrace to Huaxia, but the tea fairy could not win, let alone the others. He was about to indicate that there were no other contestants when Qin Haodong said, Mr. Gao, let me have a try. Can you do that? Gao Fengwen asked in surprise. At Qin Haodong's age, it was amazing that he had made achievements in medicine and antiques. It was hard to imagine that he was also proficient in the way of tea. Qin Haodong smiled and said, yes, it's not a big deal. Maybe I'll win. Seeing that he was full of confidence, Gao Fengwen said, well, if you're interested, you can have a try. As soon as Qin Haodong stood up, Lang Sanyuan, who was next to him, said disdainfully, you're overestimating yourself. You want to be in the limelight. Even the tea fairy can't win. What's the use of you going up? You'll be a disgrace to Huaxia. Without looking at Lang Sanyuan, Qin Haodong went straight to the stage. It was useless to talk to such a narrow-minded villain. He could just slap him in the face. President Qian, let me have a taste of Miss Ai's tea ceremony. Hua Mingrui gave up her position and looked at Qin Haodong meaningfully. She had always been very conceited in the way of tea, but now even she could not win. She didn't know where this young man's confidence came from. Someone challenged. The second round of the competition began. The staff replaced all the tea sets that Hua Mingrui and Yagyu Ai had just used and brought 2 new tea sets for them to use. Ai glanced at Qin Haodong and said with a charming smile, handsome boy, can you do it? Don't tell me you're useless. There was a double meaning in her words, which were full of provocation. Qin Haodong smiled slightly and said, you'll know after you try it. Then he picked up the tea set on the table and began to operate it. A trace of disdain flashed in Ai's eyes. Compared with Hua Mingrui, Qin Haodong's movements were much more stiff and there was no beauty to speak of. It was no different from ordinary people making tea at home. It was obvious that he was a layman. The others also sighed, especially the audience. They felt very sorry for the draw just now. They had thought that there was hope for Ai Yagyu to defeat Yagyu Ai, but now they were deeply disappointed. The young man's performance did not have the demeanor of a tea ceremony master. Qin Haodong ignored the others' expressions and calmly made his own tea. Time passed slowly. When Ai made a new pot of tea, Qin Haodong had completed all the previous procedures. The difference was that Ai's teapot had a faint fragrance of tea, while Qin Haodong's teapot had no smell at all. Ai said contemptuously, handsome boy, do you think it's necessary to compete? I don't think we should bother the judges. Qin Haodong looked at her and smiled slightly. I think so too. There's no need to bother the judges. Lang Sanyuan said sarcastically, it's shameful. It's really shameful. You're not even as good as my nanny. What's the point of competing? Gao Fengwen and Guofeng's expressions changed, but the facts were there, so they had nothing to say. Just when everyone thought that Qin Haodong was going to admit defeat, he picked up the teapot in front of him and slowly poured the tea into the teacup in front of him. A golden liquid flowed out like a mountain spring, hitting the wall of the teacup and making a clear sound, as if a musical instrument was playing. At the same time, a strong fragrance of tea spread from the stage to the audience. Soon, the entire venue was filled with thousands of people, filling everyone's nostrils. Gao Fengwen's expression changed greatly when he smelled the tea. His disappointment was swept away and replaced by ecstasy. Fragrance pervades the field. Oh my God, it's the third realm, fragrance pervades the field. Hua Mingrui did not step down from the stage. She had been standing next to Qin Haodong. At this time, she was so surprised that her face turned pale. She had been obsessed with the tea ceremony for many years, and it had always been her dream to reach the third realm, fragrance pervades the field. However, this realm was too difficult. She had not expected that what she had failed to do would be done by someone else today. The young man in front of her seemed to be casual, but he had really reached the realm of fragrance pervades the field. AI, who had been very proud just now, was now as pale as a ghost. After being immersed in the tea ceremony for so many years, she certainly knew what fragrance pervades the field meant. Even her teacher could not reach this realm. She had lost, and it was a complete and utter defeat. Qin Haodong glanced at AI and said jokingly, "Miss AI, you just said that you don't need to bother the judges. Should you admit defeat?" AI bit her lip. Although she was extremely reluctant, she still said with great difficulty, "I admit defeat." One was in the second realm of the tea ceremony, while the other was in the third realm of the tea ceremony. If she asked the judges to judge such an obvious gap, people would laugh their heads off. If the score was 10-0, she would lose even more face. It was better to admit defeat directly. Seeing the neon woman admit defeat on the spot, the audience burst into thunderous cheers. Yagyu Hirai's expression changed greatly. He had thought that the first round would be a tie with Huaxia. He did not expect to be defeated in the blink of an eye, and it was a terrible defeat. Qin Haodong stood up and cupped his hands to the excited audience. Then, he turned around and walked off the stage. When he returned to his seat, he glanced at Lang Sanyuan next to him. Lang Sanyuan had just ridiculed Qin Haodong for being a disgrace and saying that his tea ceremony was not as good as his nanny's. In the blink of an eye, he had been slapped in the face. At this time, he directly buried his head in his pants and did not even have the courage to look at Qin Haodong. The first round of the competition came to an end, and the second round officially began. On the neon side, Chiba Mieko went directly to the stage and said to the audience, "In the second round of the exchange competition, we would like to see the identification ability of Huaxia antique experts. We have prepared a total of 3 pairs of collections. They may all be real, or they may all be fake. If the Huaxia experts identify all of them correctly, we will admit defeat." Qian Duo asked, "Miss Chiba, I would like to ask how you can ensure that the answers you give are fair and just." Chiba Mieko said, "We will put the authenticity of the collections in a small box in advance and give it to you for safekeeping. In this way, we can ensure the fairness of the answers." "That's a good idea." Qian Duo nodded. Writing the answers in advance could prevent the neon people from denying it later. The neon people had never been very trustworthy. Otherwise, they would not have denied the crimes they had committed. On the Huaxia side, Guofeng whispered to Qin Haodong, "Brother Qin, I'll go up and have a look first. If I can't do it, I'll ask you to come up." After that, he strode to the stage. Qian Duo said to Chiba Mieko, "Miss Chiba, President Gua is already on the stage. Please take out the collections you want to identify." Chiba Mieko waved her hand to the audience. 2 neon people walked onto the stage with 2 very simple painting tubes. Chiba Mieko first handed a small wooden box containing the answers to Qian Duo. Then, she opened the painting tube and carefully took out the 2 scrolls inside. She spread them on the table. At the same time, the electronic projection equipment on the stage projected the 2 scrolls on a huge electronic screen. The audience could also see them clearly. Written on these 2 scrolls was an ancient poem: "The lantern at the 3rd watch, the rooster at the 5th watch, it is the time to bury one's head in study. If one's black hair doesn't learn early, one's white hair regrets studying late." This exhortation to study was written in cursive, and the entire scroll was written with vigor and vigor. The author was Enchanting. Chapter 262. Oh my God, it's Enchanting's authentic work. It's just Enchanting's calligraphy. I'm not sure if it's authentic. The neon woman said it might be fake. If it's Enchanting's authentic work, how much would it cost? At least tens of millions. Enchanting was no stranger to the people of Huaxia. Many people who had come to watch the competition today were lovers of calligraphy and painting. For a moment, there was a lot of discussion under the stage. However, people soon found the problem. The two paintings were exactly the same. If they looked closely, the handwriting on the left was lighter than the one on the right. There was no other difference. Dude, which one is real? I don't know. We need Director Gua to identify which one is real and which one is fake. I think they might both be fake. It's not easy to find Enchanting's calligraphy. Maybe someone in Sanlitun made it. On the stage, Chiba Mieko smiled at Guofeng and said, Mr. Gua, please appraise it. Which one is real? Which one is fake? Guofeng nodded, took out a pair of white gloves and put them on. Then, he took out a magnifying glass and began to identify them carefully. At first, he was very calm. He thought that with his years of experience and skills in the antique industry, he would be able to distinguish the authenticity of the two works. However, as time went by, his expression became more and more serious. Later, there was a faint sweat on his forehead. Guofeng looked at the two works more than a dozen times, but no matter how he looked at them, they were real. He couldn't find any flaws. But that was impossible. Even if Enchanting had written two such exhortations, they couldn't be exactly the same. The font size was exactly the same. It was as if they had been printed by a photocopier. One of them must have been fabricated. Chiba Mieko stood aside and sneered. Mr. Gua, how long do you need to give me the result? Do you want me to make you a cup of tea? Her words seemed to be polite, but they were full of sarcasm. Don't worry, I'll give you the answer now. While speaking, Qin Haodong walked onto the stage. According to the rules, the Huaxia side could also send 3 people to appraise antiques, as long as they could give the same result in the end. Seeing Qin Haodong appear again, Chiba Mieko's expression changed slightly. Not only had she suffered a loss at the hands of this young man last night, but Yagyu Ai had also been defeated by him at the tea ceremony. Could it be that he had studied antique appraisal? Chiba Mieko shook her head secretly. Impossible. This is impossible. Generally speaking, it took time to reach the peak of each industry. It was impossible for a person to be proficient in all kinds of industries, unless he was an immortal. Seeing Qin Haodong on the stage, Guofeng finally breathed a sigh of relief. He really could not do anything about these 2 pieces of calligraphy. At the same time, he was secretly glad that he had the foresight to invite Qin Haodong here. Otherwise, if the Huaxia people could not identify the authenticity of his calligraphy, it would be really shameful. He said, Brother Qin, can you tell me which one is real and which one is fake? Qin Haodong smiled slightly and said, Director Gua, in fact, these 2 pieces of calligraphy are very simple, but you've been deceived by them. As the old saying goes, you've been led into a ditch by them. Chiba Mieko frowned and said, What do you mean, Mr. Qin? How did I deceive you? Qin Haodong said, In fact, it's very simple. These 2 pieces of calligraphy are original. You have to let Director Gua choose which one is fake. Aren't you forcing him to do something? What? These 2 pieces of calligraphy are real? How is that possible? Is this young man talking nonsense? How could they both be real? The 2 pieces of calligraphy are exactly the same. No wonder. This young man is so accomplished in the tea ceremony at such a young age. It's normal that he doesn't know antiques. After all, no one is perfect. After hearing Qin Haodong's words, the audience immediately became restless. Chiba Mieko's expression changed slightly, but she quickly calmed down and said, antique appraisal depends on eyesight and experience. Don't talk nonsense. Are you better than Mr. Gua? She wanted to provoke a conflict between Qin Haodong and Guo Feng. In her opinion, Guo Feng was the president of the Antique Association, the director of the Antique Appraisal Center, and a veteran figure in the antique industry. He would not casually listen to Qin Haodong's opinion. Unexpectedly, as soon as she finished speaking, Guo Feng said firmly, I believe Brother Qin. Since he said both pieces are real, then they are both real. That's the result of our appraisal. Chiba Mieko said, are you sure? You know, there is only one result. Once it is determined, it can't be changed. I'm sure. Guo Feng's tone was very firm. Then he turned to look at Qian Duo and said, we have given the final result of the appraisal. Let's reveal the answer. Since Guo Feng was sure, Qian Duo no longer hesitated. He opened the box in his hand and took out a white card from it. It was written that both pieces of calligraphy were authentic. The content of the card was revealed on the big screen, and the venue suddenly boiled over. Oh my God, these two pieces of calligraphy are authentic works of Enchanting. How is that possible? The Japanese are so cunning. They actually took out two authentic works for appraisal. Fortunately, the young man has good eyesight. Otherwise, he would have been cheated by them. Obviously, the Huaxia side had won the first round of appraisal. Guo Feng was full of joy, but he was still dizzy. He asked Qin Haodong, what the hell is going on? How can two pieces of calligraphy be exactly the same and both be authentic? Qin Haodong said, Director Guo, you're confused. Did you forget the story of Huaxia's power penetrating the paper? As soon as he said that, Guo Feng immediately came to a realization. It turned out that when ancient calligraphers waved their brushes and splashed ink, their poems were vigorous and powerful. They could often penetrate the xian paper under the brush and reach the next layer. It was said that a master could cover 3 layers of xian paper. This could explain why two works of calligraphy were exactly the same and were both authentic. In fact, if he had calmed down and thought about it, he could have figured out the mystery. Unfortunately, he was in a competition, and his nerves had been tense. In addition, Chiba Mieko had misled him at the beginning. Subconsciously, he felt that one of them must be fake. Qin Haodong said to Chiba Mieko, Miss Chiba, did you prepare these two collections? It's a good plan, but it's a pity that it will fail. It turned out that Chiba Mieko was proficient in Huaxia culture and knew that the story of Enchanting, the great calligrapher, was about the story of Enchanting. Therefore, she had done everything possible to get two authentic works of Enchanting for appraisal. She could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. On the one hand, she could mislead the Huaxia appraisal experts. On the other hand, if the Huaxia side gave a wrong appraisal result, it would be a joke. Imagine how shameful it would be for a nation to be defeated by its own classic. The plan was beautiful, but unfortunately, she had met Qin Haodong. Nothing could hide from his powerful spirit. Chiba Mieko snorted and said, don't be too proud. This is only the first collection. After saying that, she waved to the audience. 2 neon people came up and put away the 2 works. At the same time, they carried 2 wooden boxes up. Everyone's eyes were attracted to these 2 wooden boxes. They didn't know what was inside, but they seemed to be very heavy. Chiba Mieko opened one of the wooden boxes and took something out. Suddenly, there was an uproar. It was a bronze animal head, the sheep head of the 12 zodiac animals. Qin Haodong was shocked at first, but then he was overjoyed. He had not expected to see the bronze head of the 12 zodiac animals again so soon. He could even feel the seal formation on the bronze head. He secretly decided that he had to get this bronze head, or at least get the upper-level spirit stone inside. Now, only the upper-level spirit stone could help him break through quickly. The audience also became restless. The 12 zodiac animal heads had an extraordinary meaning for the Huaxia people. Now, 8 of them had returned to Huaxia, and the other 4 were missing. The sheep head was among them. No one had expected that it would be in the hands of the Yagyu family in Neon. Chiba Mieko held the bronze head in her hands and smiled at the audience. She said, "I know that the thing in my hands means a lot to Huaxia. Today, I'll give you a chance. Let's see if you can take it back." As she said that, she opened another wooden box and took out another identical sheep head. Then she continued, "This bronze head came from the Summer Palace in Huaxia. It was lost to the Yagyu family a long time ago. In order to prove that the casting technology of Neon is not inferior to that of Huaxia, the Yagyu family hired a skilled craftsman to make another imitation. In our opinion, this imitation is exactly the same as the one from Huaxia. There is no difference. Today, I brought both. As long as the experts in Huaxia can choose the real one, we will immediately give it to Huaxia. If the experts in Huaxia can't tell which one is real and which one is fake, then there is nothing we can do but keep it in Neon. At the same time, it will prove that our casting technology is not inferior to that of Huaxia." Qin Haodong thought to himself, "It seems that Neon has been preparing for this cultural exchange for a long time. Every move they made was a trap. If they were not careful, Huaxia would lose face." It was a pity that the Neon people had not expected that he, the reborn immortal emperor, would be involved. The 2 sheep heads looked the same to others, but he could tell at a glance that one of them was running the sealing formation of the Yuan sect. It was obvious which one was real and which one was fake. Guo Feng's face suddenly became serious. He was very clear about the significance of the 12 zodiac animals to Huaxia. If he missed the opportunity to take back the sheep head, he would not be able to forgive himself, not to mention the public opinion. After Chiba Mieko finished speaking, she put the 2 sheep heads on the table and said to Guofeng and Qin Haodong, "You 2 can start the appraisal. Don't miss this precious opportunity. Otherwise, as the old Huaxia saying goes, you will not be able to face your elders again." "Don't worry, we won't take the wrong thing." Qin Haodong said to Guofeng, "Director Guo, let me have a look first. If I'm not sure, then you can take action." Guofeng knew that Qin Haodong was saving face for him. He said, "Brother Qin, you must take back the treasure of Huaxia. Don't worry, I won't let you down." Qin Haodong walked in front of the 2 sheep heads. In order to distinguish them, he had pasted a number on them. The one with the magic formation was pasted with number 1, and the fake one was pasted with number 2. Everyone's eyes were focused on Qin Haodong, expecting him to bring back the treasure of Huaxia. Qin Haodong held the 2 sheep heads in his hands and looked at them. In fact, it was all for show. Then he put the sheep head number 1 back into the wooden box. Everyone was stunned, including Chiba Mieko. She did not understand how he was appraising it. Of course, he was not doing this to appraise it, but to deceive people. The moment the sheep head was put into the wooden box, he unlocked the sealing formation of the Yuan sect. Then he used his divine mind to put the upper-level spirit stone into the storage ring. Then he resealed it. Chapter 263. Everything was done smoothly. The whole process only took a second or 2. When the animal head was taken out again, it looked the same as before. No one knew that the spirit stone had been taken away. Qin Haodong was relieved. The spirit stone finally belonged to him. He had not expected to receive such a gift at a cultural exchange meeting. He held the number 1 bronze head and said to Chiba Mieko, "I've identified it. This is the real one. Qin-kun, are you sure? Don't you want to take a closer look?" Chiba Mieko's heart was in turmoil. She naturally knew which sheep head was the real one, but she did not understand how Qin Haodong had done it. He had casually put it in a wooden box and then taken it out. What kind of unique identification method was that? There's no need to look anymore. I'm sure it's the one. Qin Haodong turned to Guofeng and said, "Director Guo, is this okay?" Guofeng now had complete trust in Qin Haodong. He nodded and said, Brother Qin, what do you think? Let's choose this one. If we make a wrong choice, I'll take responsibility. There was complete silence below the stage. There were nearly 1,000 people in the venue, but not a single sound could be heard. They were all looking at the stage nervously. Some even held their breath. Everyone knew the importance of this choice. If they made the right choice, they could bring the national treasure back to their country. If they made the wrong choice, they would become a joke all over the world. Seeing the determination in Qin Haodong in Guo Feng's eyes, Chiba Mieko felt bitter. Before bringing the sheep head to the Celestial Empire, the Yaguas had had a fierce debate. The opposing side believed that the sheep head had been in neon for a century and its market value had exceeded 200 million yuan. It was not worth it to use it as a bet. The opposing side believed that the sheep head was particularly important to the Celestial Empire. If they used it to attack the Celestial Empire's appraisal experts, the influence would be unprecedented. Once they succeeded, the Celestial Empire would lose face in front of the world. Therefore, it was worth the risk. The most important thing was that the fake sheep head was no different from the real one. They had even invited many antique experts to identify it, but no one could tell it apart. If the Yaguas hadn't numbered it in advance, they wouldn't have been able to tell which one was the real one. Under such circumstances, there was only a 50% chance that the Chinese would be able to retrieve the genuine goat's head. It was completely worth the risk. The debate between the two sides was very fierce. In the end, Chiba Mieko stood firmly on the side of agreement, which made the master of the Yagyu family agree to bring the sheep head to the Celestial Empire. But now, Qin Haodong had easily taken away the genuine sheep's head. Another conspiracy of the Yagyu family had come to nothing. In the Celestial Empire's language, it was like trying to steal a chicken but failing to succeed. Even if Chiba Mieko had a special identity, she would be condemned by all parties after returning home. While she was in a daze, Qian Duo did not hesitate and excitedly opened the box in his hand. In his opinion, as long as Qin Haodong was certain about something, he would not be wrong. This number 1 sheep head was definitely the authentic one that had been lost in Huaxia. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the box was opened. Inside was a small white card, on which was written, "Number 1 is genuine." Seeing the image displayed on the big screen, the venue was silent at first. After a few seconds of silence, it suddenly erupted like a tsunami. Hooray! Our national treasure is finally back. Dr. Qin is so awesome. Long live Dr. Qin, Dr. Qin, you're our hero. We love you, Dr. Qin, I want to marry you. I want to give birth to many children for you. Guo Feng reached out and stroked the bronze head. He was so excited that his eyes were full of tears. Below the stage, even Gao Fengwen, Tang Qingji, and the other old men were jumping with excitement. Although Lang Sanyuan disliked Qin Haodong very much, as a Celestial Empire man, he still cheered with excitement. In the entire venue, except for the neon people, who looked gloomy, Qin Haodong was the calmest one. This kind of choice was not difficult for him. Compared to the bronze head, he valued the upper-level spirit stone more. At this time, it was already in his pocket. Chiba Mieko took a deep breath and adjusted her depressed mood. Then, she asked, "Qin-kun, can you tell me how you identified it?" Qin Haodong looked at her with a smile and said jokingly, "It's very simple. I don't like it." No one had expected him to give such an answer. At first, the audience burst into laughter, and then they shouted together, "We don't like it either." Of course, Chiba Mieko did not believe this answer. However, a hero was judged by success or failure. No matter what, he had guessed correctly. At the end of this round of identification, the sheep head had become a Celestial Empire item according to the previous agreement. Gao Fengwen had sent someone to take it away. This time, Neon had prepared a total of 3 collections. According to the best of 3, they had lost. However, for the sake of face, they still had to take out the last collection. Since the beginning of the competition, Neon had been defeated again and again. They were looking forward to winning one round, at least to save face. Chiba Mieko waved her hand at the audience. 2 more neon people brought up 2 cardboard boxes. The audience looked up excitedly. The wooden box had contained the bronze head of the 12 zodiac animals. They wondered what the neon people had brought up this time. Chiba Mieko opened the box and carefully took out 2 things. They were 2 gorgeous women's tricolor figurines. Tang Sankai. It's Tang Sankai. Someone under the stage had already shouted. The 2 women's tricolor figurines were about 30 centimeters tall and had different faces. One seemed to be dancing, while the other was standing there with a leisurely and elegant expression. The figures were very plump, fully demonstrating the aesthetic view of the Tang dynasty that fat was beautiful. The 2 women's clothes were very bold. They had very low necklines, which were no weaker than modern low-cut dresses. They looked very sexy and beautiful. Chiba Mieko said to Guofeng and Qin Haodong, I don't need to say more. I think you 2 know that this is the famous Tang Sankai in Celestial Empire. Please identify which one is real and which one is fake. I'll do it. Guofeng had always studied ancient Celestial Empire porcelain. He took out a magnifying glass, walked over, and began to carefully observe the 2 women's tricolor figurines. Qin Haodong did not speak. He watched quietly. In fact, he had already sensed that the 2 tricolor figurines had no spiritual qi at all. They were completely fake. It seemed that the Japanese had really put a lot of effort into this cultural exchange. First, they had made 2 authentic works of Enchanting. Then they had made 2 bronze heads of the 12 zodiac animals, one real and one fake. Now, they had brought out 2 fake Tang Sankai for the Celestial Empire to guess. It had to be said that their strategy was very good. It was a pity that they had met Qin Haodong. Although he did not study much about ancient Celestial Empire culture, it was easy for him to distinguish the authenticity of the antiques. Guofeng looked at them for a long time. Finally, he turned around and called Qin Haodong, saying, Brother Qin, I'm not sure. He pointed to one of the women's tricolor figurines and said, This work is not only colorful, but the glaze is bright and the shape is very delicate. According to the traditional appraisal method of Tang Sankai, there is no problem with the opening on it. The opening Guofeng was talking about was the crack caused by the difference between the glaze and the glaze. After the Tang Sankai was unearthed, this kind of opening would generally become a prominent feature to identify the authenticity. Qin Haodong said, Can't you see the problem? He had to admit that the 2 fakes were so good that they could be mistaken for the real ones. He could not see the problem at all unless he used his spirit to sense the spiritual qi. However, he could not use this kind of thing as evidence, so he hoped that Guofeng could find the problem, which would save him a lot of trouble. Guofeng thought for a moment and said, The problem is that they are too perfect. Even the tricolor figurines in the Celestial Empire Museum are not as perfect as these 2. Chiba Mieko said, Mr. Gua, although I don't know much about antique appraisal, I don't think that being too perfect can be a standard to identify the authenticity, right? No one said that the tricolor figurines in the Celestial Empire Museum are the best. Maybe the one we have is better than the one you have. Guofeng was silent. This was exactly the reason why he couldn't figure it out. If these 2 female tricolored figurines were fakes, why couldn't he find any problem with them? If they were real, it didn't feel right. These 2 figurines were too perfect to be believed. Chiba Mieko sneered and said, What do you think? When can you give me the result of the appraisal? I can give it to you now, Qin Haodong said, These 2 things are both fakes. They are both fakes. Guofeng shook his head. He could not believe that such good things were fakes. However, he believed Qin Haodong's words. He turned to Chiba Mieko and said, Did you hear that? We have concluded that these 2 are fakes. Chiba Mieko smiled and said, Since you are so sure, let's reveal the answer. Then she nodded to Qian Duoduo. Qian Duoduo opened the lid of the box in his hand and took out another piece of paper. When everyone's eyes focused on the piece of paper, they found that the first tricolor figurine was the real one, and the second tricolor figurine was the fake one. The audience was stunned. This time, Qin Haodong and Guo Feng had guessed wrong. However, no one cared too much about the result. After all, they had already won 2 rounds. According to the best of 3 rules, Huaxia had already won. An imperceptible smile appeared on Chiba Mieko's face. Although she had lost in the treasure appraisal round, she had not lost too badly. She had finally won a round in front of Qin Haodong, the monster. Just as she was about to ask someone to put away the 2 tricolor figurines, Qin Haodong said, "Wait a minute." Chiba Mieko asked in surprise, "Mr. Qin, do you have any other questions?" "I don't think the answer you gave is right. These 2 tricolor figurines are fakes." As soon as he said that, the audience became restless again. No one had thought of questioning the answer given by the neon people. After all, the first 2 rounds had been very fair. Could it be that the neon people had cheated and written the fakes as the real ones? Given the neon people's cunning character, they might have really done that. Chiba Mieko's expression changed as she said, "Mr. Qin, I admire your attainments in the tea ceremony and antiques, but you have to have a basis for your words. If you doubt our conclusion, please point out the problem with the first tricolor figurine." Qin Haodong did not answer her. Instead, he turned to look at Guo Feng and asked, "Director Guo, if antiques like these are fakes, can they be fakes?" "I'm not sure. Generally speaking, it's very difficult to fake them." Although Guo Feng was an expert in ancient literature, he was not very good at counterfeiting antiques. Even if some things were sometimes identified as fakes, they could not be smashed. Chapter 264. Everyone was shocked. What was this young man doing? Was he crazy? How could he break other people's things? Chiba Mieko was shocked at first, then she said angrily, "What are you going to do? Why did you break our things? Do you know how much this tricolor figurine is worth? It's worth at least 30 million yuan." Guo Feng was also shocked. At Lin Xiaotian's birthday party, Qin Haodong had first broken Lin Pingchao's jade Buddha statue, and then he had destroyed Wu Daozi's lotus painting. He had not expected to repeat the same thing today. He had broken the Japanese-made Tang's Sankai in public, the one that had been recognized as authentic. Qin Haodong didn't think so. This thing was obviously fake, but it had to be fake in front of him. He had to find its loopholes. He ignored Chiba Mieko and squatted down to find some evidence in the pile of debris. Unexpectedly, he saw a small note made of A4 paper. He picked up the paper and saw 3 big words on the front, "You win." He turned the note over and saw a few lines of small words on it. "You're right. This Tang's Sankai is fake. I'm proud that my skills are unparalleled in the world. No one can identify a fake made by me. Since you can see it, I can only say that you win." There was also a signature under the note, which said, "Ghost Hand." It was said that there was an unspoken rule in the antique counterfeiting industry. In order to show respect for the ancestors, no matter how real they were, they had to leave a loophole. This Ghost Hand was also a wonderful person. He had left a loophole in the Tang's Sankai fake. No wonder Guo Feng had been looking for it with a magnifying glass for a long time but had not found a loophole. Only someone like Qin Haodong would knock open such a treasure that was worth tens of millions of yuan. However, this had saved him a lot of trouble. He had originally wanted to find a loophole in the porcelain fragments, but now it seemed that it was completely unnecessary. The others also saw Qin Haodong find a note in the porcelain fragments, but they did not understand what it was. He stood up and handed the note to Chiba Mieko. He sneered and said, "The evidence is irrefutable. What else do you want to deny?" Chiba Mieko took it and looked at it. She said with a straight face, "This doesn't mean anything. Maybe it belongs to the people of the Tang dynasty. If it's a product made by a folk imitating the official kiln, it's still a genuine Tang Sankai." Qin Haodong sneered. Miss Mieko, I don't know how much you know about Huaxia. Did A4 paper appear in the Tang dynasty? Could it be that the people of the Tang dynasty knew how to use simplified characters? Did the people of the Tang dynasty call fake goods fake? The audience below the stage roared with laughter and shouted one after another, "A fake is a fake, don't deny it. Do you have any common sense?" The simplified Chinese characters have only been around for a few decades. How dare you say that it's from the Tang dynasty? A loss is a loss, don't try to deny it, this. Chiba Mieko was speechless. She was not good at antiques. The collection had been provided by the Yagyu family, and the answers had been given by them. Yagyu Hirai's face was livid. He had just seen that Qin Haodong's attainments in antiques were unparalleled. Qin Haodong had guessed correctly twice in a row, so he had played a trick and asked his men to change the answers of the two Tang Sankai. He had thought that he would be able to win the game and save some face for Neon. He had not expected that he would not be able to get away with it and would be pointed out by Qin Haodong on the spot. Qin Haodong continued, "Miss Chiba Mieko, don't blame yourself too much. It's not your fault. It's just that Neon can't compare with Huaxia in terms of casting technology or making fake goods. The difference is too big." Chiba Mieko's cheeks were red. After 3 games, the Neon Nation had completely lost. "We admit defeat." After saying that, she hurried off the stage with a livid face. She didn't even want the fake Tang Sankai anymore. Huaxia is mighty. Dr. Qin is mighty. Long live Huaxia. Huaxia will win. Mr. Qin, you're so awesome. I want to have a baby with you too. The audience was very excited, but Qin Haodong was also a little speechless. That bearded man was shouting that he wanted to have a baby with him. What the hell was that? After Chiba Mieko stepped off the stage, Yagyu Hirai comforted her, "Miss Mieko, don't think too much. There are still 3 games left. We still have a chance. It's all Qin Haodong's fault. Our original plan was perfect. If he hadn't appeared, we would have won." Chiba Mieko said angrily. She had seen clearly on the stage that Guofeng had fallen into their carefully designed trap every time. However, Qin Haodong had quickly corrected them. Otherwise, they would not have lost the game, let alone the bronze head of the 12 zodiacs. I really don't know where such a monster came from. He knows the tea ceremony, but he is also proficient in antiques. Yagyu Hirai gritted his teeth and said, "But don't worry. We will win the next game. I don't believe that this guy is also proficient in painting." Chiba Mieko said, "That's true. Even if he knows how to paint, he can't compare to Mr. Koyama Lizzie." On the stage, Qian Duo was a little excited after winning 2 games in a row. He said happily, "Next, let's have the 3rd game of the cultural exchange. The representative of Neon and the representative of Jiangnan City will compete in traditional Chinese painting." The audience applauded warmly. In their opinion, they had already won the first 2 rounds. In the 3rd round of the competition, Huaxia would definitely win. It was no wonder that everyone was so optimistic. "I just heard his name is Koyama Lizzie. How could he be Huaxia?" Tang Qingji took a deep breath, calmed himself down, and began to tell Qin Haodong. It turned out that Koyama Lizzie's real name was He Lizzie. He was a pure Huaxia man, and he was from the same hometown as Tang Qingji. He Lizzie had shown his talent in painting when he was very young. Later, he was admitted to the Huaxia Academy of Fine Arts, the best academy for painting. During his studies in the academy, He Lizzie had learned painting from several masters and had made great achievements. He had become famous in the Huaxia art circle before he was 30 years old. Qin Haodong was even more confused when he heard this. He asked, "If so, why did he go to Neon?" Tang Qingji said, "It was all because of a competition." When Tang Qingji was 30 years old, China held the most prestigious Chinese art competition in the country. The prize money for this competition was very high, and it was very influential. Other than the famous Chinese art masters, many other artists signed up for the competition, including Tang Qingji himself. What was the result? How did Lizzie do? What was Mr. Tang's ranking? Qin Haodong asked with great interest. Lizzie showed amazing talent in that competition. He painted a vivid peony painting with the charm of traditional painting. Many people thought that he would win the first place in the competition after seeing his painting. He thought so too. Tang Qingji said with a nostalgic look on his face. However, when the results of the competition came out, Lizzie didn't win the championship as everyone had expected. Instead, he got second place, and I got 21st place. Qin Haodong didn't expect that Tang Qingji was so much better than Lizzie. He asked, second place is a good result. Did he go to Neon because of that? Of course. Lizzie believed that there was a shady deal in the competition. He thought that the judges of the competition had robbed him of the championship. He went to Neon out of anger and married a Neon woman soon. It wouldn't be a big deal if he just married a Neon woman. But he changed his name to Koyama Lizzie and slandered Huaxia in public many times. He denied that he was a Huaxia man. At the same time, he represented Neon in a world painting competition and won the championship. Qin Haodong frowned slightly. Lizzie could question the result of the competition, but he couldn't betray a nation because of it. He shouldn't slander Huaxia and be an enemy of Huaxia. Anyway, he is a descendant of Huaxia. Without the cultivation of Huaxia, he wouldn't have achieved what he has today. What he did was no different from treason. In other words, he is a traitor, which is more hateful than what Li Donghai did. Tang Qingji sighed again and said, ever since the incident, the whole painting and calligraphy circle in Huaxia despised Lizzie's behavior. But no matter what, he's really good at traditional Chinese painting. I can't compare to him. Chapter 265. After hearing the conversation between the two, Guofan exclaimed, What? He's Lizzie? That bastard is challenging Huaxia on behalf of Neon. Lizzie's history had caused a stir in Huaxia more than a decade ago. Qin Haodong didn't know about it because he was too young, but everyone in Guofeng's age knew about it. Now that he knew that Koyama Lizzie was Lizzie, he was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. As the team leader, Gao Fengwen thought about something else. He asked, Are you sure you're not Lizzie's opponent? Tang Qingji shook his head and said with a wry smile, Lizzie was second in the competition, and I was only 21st. The gap between us was huge. Painting is mainly about talent, not personal effort. Over the years, the gap between us has only grown. I'll be humiliated if I go up. At the same time, Lizzie was talking to Qian Duo on the stage. Lizzie said in Neon language, Mr. Qian, I want to add a condition for the next competition. Qian Duo frowned. More than a decade ago, he was in his 20s, which was the most nationalistic period of his life. He remembered the image of Koyama Lizzie very well and immediately recognized who he was. Lizzie, I know you're from Huaxia, or you used to be. I hope you can speak to me directly in Huaxia. Lizzie smiled and said, I'm sorry, Mr. Qian. I've learned a more advanced language, and I've forgotten the low-level language. Now I can only speak the noble Neon language. Please translate for me. Qian Duo was so angry that his eyes were on fire. If it weren't for his identity as a host, he would have rushed up and slapped this guy who had forgotten his ancestors. He suppressed his anger and said, I'm sorry, I'm just a host. I have no obligation to translate for you. Well, it doesn't matter. I have my own translator. Lizzie waved to the audience and a young man in his 20s came up. Unlike Li Donghai, this man worked as a translator in Neon, but he was a Neon native and learned Huaxia as a foreign language. As a result, a strange scene appeared on the stage. A Huaxia man was speaking Neon, and a Neon man was helping him translate into Huaxia. It was estimated that such a scene was rare in the entire history of mankind. He Lizzie said in neon. Mr. Koyama Lizzie thinks that today's game is a bit dull. It's not interesting to just decide the winner. He hopes to add a bet. If Mr. Koyama Lizzie loses, he will kneel down to the Huaxia team in public to show respect. Similarly, if the Chinese lost, they would also have to kneel down to Mr. Koyama Liji. Would the Chinese have the courage to accept this challenge? Qian Duo said angrily, He Lizzie, do you know what you're doing? Of course I know. I will return the humiliation I suffered to China. Koyama Lizzie smiled and said, also, Mr. Qian is a host. I hope that you will have a bit of professionalism and call me by my name, Koyama Lizzie. I'm now a noble neon, not a lowly Huaxia person. You. Qian Duo was so angry that his entire body trembled. At this time, some people under the stage also recognized He Lizzie's identity and quickly spread his story. Suddenly, there was an uproar. He Lizzie, you have forgotten your ancestors. How dare you set foot on the land of Huaxia? Get out of here, traitor. Dog. Traitor, get out. Shameless. Don't forget who trained you. Don't forget where you learned traditional Chinese painting. How dare you challenge Huaxia? The audience under the stage was very excited. If there were not many security guards to maintain order, they would have rushed to the stage and torn He Lizzie into pieces. Qin Haodong also became angrier and angrier. Neon had really deliberately planned for this trip to Huaxia. They had even brought a big traitor like He Lizzie. If Huaxia's traditional Chinese painting lost to such a shameless guy, the impact on the world would be absolutely unprecedented. He Lizzie, who was on the stage, was not moved at all. He looked at the excited people under the stage and said with a smile, You Huaxia people are good at talking. If you have the ability, come up and challenge me. If you have the ability, accept my additional conditions. If I lose, I will immediately kneel down and apologize to you. Do you have the ability? After that, he turned to look at Qian Duo and said, I've been here for a long time. Why haven't I seen the representative of Huaxia? Do they dare not accept the challenge? Don't admit defeat directly. That's too boring. We have to accept his challenge and teach this traitor a lesson. Let him know what Huaxia's traditional Chinese painting is. Mr. Tang, teach this shameless guy a lesson. Make him kneel down. People under the stage only knew how hateful what He Lizzie had done, but no one knew his attainments and achievements in painting as well as Tang Qingji did. Therefore, they asked the Huaxia side to accept the challenge as soon as possible. In their opinion, it was easy to defeat a villain like He Lizzie. Seeing this scene, Gao Fengwen and the others on the rostrum were livid. Finally, Tang Qingji gritted his teeth and said, Brother Gao, I'll go up and have a try. Gao Fengwen said, Old Tang, don't do it if you're not 100% sure. At worst, we can admit defeat. Tang Qingji insisted, No. We can admit defeat to anyone, but we can't admit defeat like this kind of person who has forgotten his ancestors. But with this guy's arrogance, if he really loses, it will be even more difficult to deal with it. Gao Fengwen held back his words. If he really lost, he would have to kneel down and apologize according to He Lizzie's proposal. That would be even more humiliating. It would be better to admit defeat directly. Tang Qingji naturally understood the meaning of Gao Fengwen's words. He stared at him and said, Don't worry. If I lose, I'll kill myself. I won't kneel down to this traitor even if I'm beaten to death. At this time, Guofeng said, Okay, you two stop fighting. Brother Qin has already gone up. The two looked up. Sure enough, Qin Haodong was already standing on the stage. Can he do it? Tang Qingji looked worried. Although he had heard about Qin Haodong's deeds from Guofeng, he felt that it was too exaggerated. He did not think that this young man could compare with a real painter, let alone the extremely talented He Lizzie. Guofeng said firmly, Don't worry. Brother Qin is an extraordinary person. I don't think it's possible without him. After seeing Qin Haodong on the stage, the audience cheered. They did not think too much. They just thought that this young man had just surprised them twice, so this time it should not be an accident. On the neon side, Yagyu Hirai looked nervous. This bastard, he's on the stage again. Is he good at painting? Logically speaking, it shouldn't be. No one can be proficient in so many industries at such a young age. Chiba Mieko said that, but she had a bad feeling in her heart. She always felt that Chin Haodong would bring them more trouble. Qian Duo looked relieved. He had seen with his own eyes that Chin Haodong had quickly drawn Wu Daozi's lotus painting with the left and right swimming dragon technique. This kind of superb skill should not be inferior to the fake neon in front of him. Lizzie looked at Chin Haodong disdainfully and said, "Young man, don't like to be in the limelight. Even if you have some skills, you will not be my opponent. Hurry up and replace that old guy Tang Qingji." Chin Haodong smiled and said, "People like you who don't even know who your ancestors are not worthy of Mr. Tang's help." Lizzie's face darkened as he said, "It seems that you won't give up until you see the coffin. Since you want to compete with me, do you dare to accept my conditions?" "Of course, or I won't come up." Chin Haodong said coldly, "And I think your conditions are too lenient. I also want to add one more condition. No matter who loses, they will destroy their own hands and never paint again. How about that? Do you dare to accept it? If not, go back to Neon and don't come to Huaxia for the rest of your life." He was completely infuriated by this traitor. He had to make this guy pay the price today. Lizzie was shocked. He didn't expect Chin Haodong to make such a bet. He knew very well that the reason why Neon had accepted him was because of his painting skills. If both of his hands were destroyed, the Neon people would definitely kick him out. Tang Qingji was also shocked and said quickly, "This young man is too impulsive. He doesn't know how good Lizzie is at painting. Hurry up and stop him." It was obvious that he was not optimistic about Chin Haodong's chances of winning. Guo Fun was a little worried, but he still said, "I have never seen Brother Chin do something he is not sure of. Since he said so, he must have his reasons. Let's not interfere." Gao Fengwen thought for a moment and said, "Yes, although Dr. Chin is young, he is not an impulsive person. I think he is sure that he will win." Seeing that both of them said so, Tang Qingji didn't say anything else. He could only watch quietly. Seeing that Lizzie did not speak for a long time, Chin Haodong asked sarcastically, "What? Don't you dare to bet?" Lizzie was in a bit of a dilemma. Chin Haodong had agreed to his conditions. If he didn't agree to the conditions put forward by the other party, he would immediately be in a weak position. However, from another perspective, few people in the whole of Huaxia could be his opponent, unless those old guys at the level of Mount Tai and the Big Dipper came out. The young man in front of him had just shouted such a bet to scare him away. Thinking of this, Lizzie suddenly became confident and said, "Why not? As long as you dare to draw, I will dare to accept it." Seeing that Lizzie had agreed, Chin Haodong turned to Gompos, who was sitting in the referee's seat, and said, "Mr. Gompos, you heard our bet. Can you be a notary?" Gompos spread out his hands and said, "As a painter, I really don't want to see this kind of thing happen, but since both of you have agreed, I can be a notary." This foreigner had studied painting in Huaxia for 10 years, so he spoke Huaxia very fluently. After the two sides negotiated, the competition officially began. Lizzie said confidently, "I'll go first." After that, he went to the drawing table set up by the staff, picked up the paintbrush and began to paint. At this time, there was a lot of noise under the stage. Everyone wanted to use their own way to affect the state of painting of the traitor. However, the moment Lizzie picked up the paintbrush, he seemed to have changed into a different person. He looked serious and had a calm temperament. He really had the demeanor of a master. As time went by, the outline of a picture had appeared on the electronic screen. It was a peony, standing proudly among hundreds of flowers, with a noble temperament, like the king of flowers. Tang Qingji sighed and said, Lizzie is best at painting peonies in his life. Today, this guy has used his unique skill. It seems that he is determined to win. It will be too difficult for Brother Qin to win. Chapter 266. Guofeng said, "Don't worry too much, Mr. Tang. It's not a big deal for Brother Qin to draw another lotus picture of Wu Daozi. At least it won't be worse than He Lizzie's." It had to be said that He Lizzie did have some painting skills. As time went by, the noise under the stage slowly subsided. After a while, he began to finish. The brush kept moving on the rice paper, and a delicate and beautiful peony picture appeared on the big electronic screen. With a shake of his wrist, he sketched the last stroke. A peony stood proudly. It was so beautiful that it made people feel like it was the king of flowers. Whether they liked He Lizzie or not, everyone couldn't help but admire his painting skills. This painting had indeed reached a very high level. He Lizzie threw the brush aside and said proudly, "Mr. Gompos, please give me a score." As a referee, Gompos came to He Lizzie's peony picture and carefully evaluated it from beginning to end. He kept nodding and said, "Good, your peony picture is really good. It has the charm of Huaxia traditional painting. I give you 85 points." Others didn't think much of it, but Tang Qingji knew that Gompos had very strict requirements for painting. 85 points was definitely a high score. If it were an ordinary contestant, he might not be able to pass. He Lizzie was also very satisfied with this result. He turned to look at Qin Haodong and said proudly, "Boy, don't you want to compete with me? It's your turn." Qin Haodong didn't seem to see the peony picture. He said lightly, "You even forgot the most basic thing of being a human. I won't compete with you. You don't deserve it." He Lizzie's expression changed and he said angrily, "What do you mean? Are you kidding me? We've already made a deal, we've already made a bet." Everyone's expression changed greatly. Although He Lizzie was despised by everyone, Qin Haodong's behavior of going back on his word was difficult to win everyone's approval. "What's the hurry? Our bet is still valid, but I have to find a contestant with the same status as you." After Qin Haodong said that, he stepped off the stage in front of everyone's surprised eyes and came to a little girl in the front row. The little girl looked to be in her early 20s. She was holding a cute little black poodle in her arms. The puppy was not too big, only about 3 or 4 months old. It looked extremely cute. He smiled at the little girl and said, "Beauty, can you lend me your dog? I'll return it to you as soon as the competition ends." "All right, I can lend it to you." The little girl didn't understand what Qin Haodong was going to do, but out of her trust in him, she handed over the puppy without hesitation. Qin Haodong returned to the stage with the poodle in his arms. Everyone was confused. What did he mean by bringing a dog up? Was he going to use a dog to compete with He Lizzie? He Lizzie said angrily, "What do you mean?" Qin Haodong smiled slightly and said, "It's a competition. The status of the contestants must be equal. You are a dog raised by the Neon people, and this is a dog raised by the Huaxia people. You two dogs are just opponents." Being called a lackey in public, He Lizzie flew into a rage out of humiliation and shouted, "Bullshit. Are you going to compete or not? If not, I'll cut off your hand." Qin Haodong didn't care. He turned to Gompos and said, "Mr. Gompos, can I let this dog compete in painting?" Gompos was also a little confused. He had never seen such a competition. He thought for a moment and said, "No matter what method you use, as long as you take out a painting in the end, it's okay. But there's one thing. You have to fulfill the final bet yourself." Qin Haodong looked at He Lizzie and said, "See? The rules allow it. Today, I'll use this dog to win against you. Boy, you're just playing with words. When you lose, I'll cut off your hand." He Lizzie was so angry that he almost went crazy. However, he didn't believe that a dog could win against him. He secretly made up his mind to cut off the hands of this abominable toy boy later. Tang Qingji, who was under the stage, stamped his feet and beat his chest and said, this young man is still too impulsive. Although he looks very happy, he will definitely lose this competition. Lang Sanyuan shook his head and said, I thought he had great skills. It turns out that he's a brainless guy. Gao Fengwen and Guo Feng were also nervous. They had thought that as long as Qin Haodong could draw the lotus painting, he would at least not lose. They hadn't expected that he would get a dog. On the foreigner's side, Yagyu Hirai laughed and said, Idiot, a complete idiot. I was a little worried that he would disrupt our plan, but now it seems that it's completely unnecessary. Later, we'll cut off his hands so that he won't be able to participate in the Chinese medicine competition. Chiba Mieko also relaxed her frown. Qin Haodong had always been a big problem for her, so it would be best to get rid of him. However, she still couldn't understand. This young man didn't look like a brainless person. How could he do such an impulsive thing? Qin Haodong didn't care what the others thought. He directly asked the staff to fetch 3 buckets of water and a small bucket of ink. After everything was ready, he rolled the little poodle in the ink and threw it on the rice paper on the table. Seeing that Qin Haodong was not joking and had really put a puppy on the paper, there was an uproar on and off the stage. Using a dog to paint, wanting to win over a real artist? Even if one thought about it with one's heels, it was also impossible. The little poodle was only 3 or 4 months old. It had been in a panic when it left its owner's arms. It had just rolled in the ink and immediately ran forward after being released. Maybe because it was too flustered and its feet were a little slippery after being stained with ink, it suddenly fell to the ground after running a few steps. The ink on its body was black. The little poodle was even more confused. It got up and continued to run forward. Soon, it ran through the rice paper. Qin Haodong took the little poodle and turned around to give it to Qian Duo. Brother Qian, please help me clean it and send it back to the little girl. Qian Duo didn't understand what he was going to do, but he could only do as he was told. No one paid attention to this. Everyone's eyes were focused on Qin Haodong's drawing paper. Because the paper had been dipped in too much ink, the footprints left by the little poodle and the marks that it had just fallen on were all covered with ink, making it look like a pool of water. The footprints were better. They were shaped like plum blossoms. However, the marks it had just fallen on were a mess. They didn't look like anything. Qin Haodong, this is the painting you made with a dog. Do you think you can beat me with this? Lizzie laughed. His face was full of ferocity. He seemed to have seen the scene of Qin Haodong admitting defeat. Yagyu Hirai, who was under the stage, laughed unscrupulously and shouted, Is this also called a painting? Isn't it much better to get someone to sprinkle some ink on it? Chiba Mieko did not speak, but there was a smile at the corner of her mouth. She had used all the thinking methods in her mind, but she had not thought of a way for Qin Haodong to turn the tables. Although the Huaxia people under the stage did not laugh, everyone was disappointed. In their opinion, Qin Haodong was bound to lose. How could such a messy painting be compared with the peony painting? Gompos shook his head. Obviously, he did not agree with the painting in front of him. He said to Qin Haodong, Mr. Qin, is your painting done? Qin Haodong said, Don't worry. There's still a little bit left. What do you mean? Didn't you say you wanted to make a painting with a dog? The dog has been taken away. Do you still want to continue painting? Lizzie's face was full of ferocity. Since you let the dog be your opponent, of course I won't use the brush. However, this painting is still lacking the last step. The last step? What did he mean? Everyone's heads were dizzy. They could not figure out what this young man wanted to do. Could he change the result without using the brush? Yagyu Hirai said with a smile, he lost and still doesn't admit it. Let's see how long he can pretend. Tang Qingji, Gao Fengwen, and the others were all confused by what they saw. Lizzie sneered and said, Then hurry up. I want to see what you have to say after this last step. It'll be done soon. Qin Haodong was still calm. He went to the table, grabbed a corner of the rice paper, and shook his wrist gently. With a crashing sound, the xian paper was already stained with ink. With a shake of his hand, the ink immediately flowed out and covered the entire scroll. Qin Haodong put the rice paper back on the table and said, "It's done." "What do you mean it's done? Isn't this a joke?" The people on and off the stage did not understand. What the hell was Qin Haodong picking up the rice paper and shaking it? Could it be that this was also a way of painting? No, look. Just as everyone was feeling puzzled, someone suddenly yelled out. Everyone's attention was turned back to the painting. Tang Qingji said in a trembling voice, "Oh my God, how is this possible? What did I see?" With a shake of Qin Haodong's hand, the xian paper, which was in a mess just now, scattered the ink. The footprints left by the little teddy were connected with each other and magically formed a plum blossom picture. The plum blossoms on the picture stood proudly. The ink flowed and formed dry tree trunks. The little teddy's footprints formed plum blossoms sporadically on it. The most amazing thing was that the place where the teddy had just fallen had become two rugged rocks. The traces left by the teddy's fur formed folds on the surface of the strange rocks, which looked more vivid. The peony painting that Lizzie had just drawn gave people a feeling of wealth and prosperity. However, although the winter plum blossom painting in front of them didn't have any flower embellishment, it gave people a feeling of pride and contempt for the wind and frost. The whole audience was silent. No one had expected that Qin Haodong's gentle shaking could create such an extraordinary painting. Yagyu Hirai, who had been laughing unscrupulously, forgot to close his mouth at this time. He was confused and dull. Amazing. It was really amazing. A little teddy who knew nothing could make such a painting. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, no one would have believed it. It's an eye-opener. It's an eye-opener for me today. There were tears in Tang Qingji's eyes as he spoke. As a painter, he naturally knew how difficult Qin Haodong's painting was. It seemed to be a simple shake, but in fact, it required a clear grasp of how much ink was left on the rice paper and a perfect control of the strength and direction. Only in this way could the ink flow to form the tree trunk and finally form a complete painting. All the details had to be perfectly integrated in the brain, and no mistakes could be made. In summary, it could only be described as a magical skill. After a moment of silence, there was a sudden burst of warm applause backstage. The audience seemed to have seen the hope of winning. At least such a painting was not inferior to Lizzie's peony painting. Gamposa's face was full of shock. This painting seemed to be a little teddy bear that ran out. This young man did nothing, but in fact, the most important thing was the last shake. It was even more important than the finishing touch. If there was a little difference, it would go 1,000 miles wrong and destroy the painting. Qian Duo woke up from the shock and shouted excitedly, "Mr. Gampos, please give your score." Chapter 267. Qin Haodong also turned his head to look at the referee, who was known for his fairness. He didn't know how many points he would get. Although the painting had been made by the little poodle, in fact, it had been completed under his control. The last shake seemed simple, but the strength of the shake, the direction, and the timing were all very particular. As long as there was a little mistake, the whole game would be lost. All of this could only be done by a person with an extremely powerful spirit like him. At this time, Gampos had become the focus of attention. Everyone's eyes were focused on his face. The Huaxia people naturally hoped that he could give a high score, while the Neon side hoped that he would give a score lower than Lizzie's, even by 1 point. Gampos looked at the plum blossom painting in front of him and was silent for a full minute. When everyone was about to collapse, he looked up and said, "Putting aside the painting process, I give it 85 points based on the quality of this painting alone." As soon as he said this, there was a sigh in the field. All the Huaxia people were slightly disappointed. They had thought that Qin Haodong could once again show a miracle and defeat the neon guy. They hadn't expected that it would still be a draw. Although the neon side had not been able to win, they were still very satisfied with the result. They had finally gotten a point, although the score looked very embarrassing and disgraceful. Qin Haodong's face was calm, and no change in his emotions could be seen. In his opinion, the score given by Gompos was fair. Indeed, in terms of the quality of this painting alone, it was comparable to He Lizzie's peony painting, but it was better in the process and means of painting. Even people who didn't know how to paint could see that Qin Haodong had drawn a painting with a dog. He hadn't even touched the brush. This painting had the same score as He Lizzie's peony painting, which had been made with all his strength. In any case, He Lizzie had lost. A person fighting a dog to a draw, no matter what, was still a shameful thing. Gompos continued to announce, I announce that the result of this painting competition is a draw. Just when everyone thought that the game was over, He Lizzie suddenly stood up and shouted, Mr. Gompos, I don't agree with your referee. I think I should be the winner of this game. Everyone present was stunned. Even Yagyu Hirai did not expect He Lizzie to object. Everyone could see that Qin Haodong had actually won the game. It was already very lucky for him to get a draw point. Gompos frowned and said, Mr. He, can you give me a reason? He Lizzie said plausibly, everyone has seen this painting just now. The key is the last step. If it weren't for the last shake, it wouldn't even be a painting. In other words, this painting was drawn by a man and a dog. Their total score is the same as mine, so I should be the winner. Everyone was dumbfounded. They didn't expect He Lizzie to be so shameless. He was shameless to the extreme. Shameless, simply too shameless. Traitor, can't you have some shame? He Lizzie, I'll give you 10 dogs. If you have the ability, you can also cooperate to draw a painting. Tang Qingji was so angry that he stared and scolded, He Lizzie really doesn't know what shame is. Can't he see that in terms of painting attainments, he and little brother Qin are miles apart? Gao Fengwen said, that's not surprising. If he knew shame, he wouldn't have done such a thing that he forgot his ancestors. Gompos frowned. Deep down, he also felt that He Lizzie's request was a bit shameless. However, Qin Haodong was indeed cooperating with him. Generally speaking, as long as a painting was done by one person, then no one else could touch it, not even to the extent of giving it pointers. In the plum blossom painting just now, the little poodle had first stepped on the plum blossom, and Qin Haodong had completed the whole painting by skillfully shaking it. Both of them were indispensable. He Lizzie cried again, it's not fair to compete with a work created through cooperation. Qin Haodong glanced at him and asked, what do you think is fair? He Lizzie said, you relied on cooperation to get the same score as me. It's very simple. You lost this game. After that, he shouted to the audience, get me a knife. I'm going to cut off his hands. Hearing his shout, someone immediately brought up a small katana. The audience was in an uproar again. This shameless guy had obviously lost, but he still wanted to cut off Qin Haodong's hands. It was too much. Yagyu Hirai smiled again and said, the shamelessness of Huaxia people is really beyond my imagination, but I like it. He had already seen that not only this game, but Qin Haodong would also be the enemy of the whole Neon in the future. If He Lizzie could cut off Qin Haodong's hands, he would definitely be very happy to see it. As for whether the process was shameless or not, he did not care at all. Gompos couldn't stand it anymore and said, Mr. He Lizzie, I think a draw is the best result of this game. He had just figured out that a dog could not paint. Strictly speaking, this painting should be regarded as Qin Haodong's work. On the surface, it was a cooperation between a man and a dog. In fact, the young man's painting level had reached a very high level, so he could do this. He Lizzie had already taken advantage of the situation by ruling a draw. In this case, he still wanted to cut off the opponent's hands, which was really shameless. As a painting addict, he naturally did not want to see a painting genius like Qin Haodong stop here. Originally, he wanted to use the authority of the referee to insist that this game was a draw. Unexpectedly, Qin Haodong said, Mr. He, what you said is a little reasonable. Let's consider it as cooperation. But I want to ask, how can you admit defeat? You want me to admit defeat? He Lizzie sneered and said, I'm also a reasonable person. If your painting can score higher than the peony painting, I will naturally admit defeat. But now that you have cooperated with me, I can only say that I have won. Qin Haodong said with a smile, that seems to make some sense. He Lizzie said proudly, what do you think? You have nothing to say, right? Then just admit defeat. Admit defeat? Since you said so, I will make you admit defeat. Qin Haodong said, in fact, my painting is not completely finished yet. Mr. Gompo's score is a little early. Only then did everyone realize that it was Qian Duo who had just asked for a score. Logically speaking, it should have been Qin Haodong himself who had asked for a score. Gompo said with a slight apology, Mr. Qin, I was a little reckless. I gave the result without asking for your opinion, but what else can you do? According to the agreement, you can't use a brush. He Lizzie said, that's right. What else can you do if you can't use a brush? Do you want to shake it a few more times? Let's see what other tricks you can play. He was very confident in his heart. At this time, the ink on the painting had dried. Even if Qin Haodong shook the painting, there would be no change. Tang Qingji frowned. He really could not think of any way that Qin Haodong could improve the score of this painting. Yagyu Hirai said nervously, I don't know what this Huaxia man can do. Chiba Mieko said, he Lizzie is a B** starred. He should have quit while he was ahead. I have a bad feeling that he is going to lose this competition. Under everyone's attention, Qin Haodong took the plum blossom painting in his hand and slowly rolled it into a cylinder. He blew into the cylinder and then said to Gompos with a smile, my painting is completely finished. Please give me a score. F***ck, it's finished just by rolling it up and blowing? What the hell is this? The glasses of everyone present were broken. No one could see what he was doing. Was blowing also a way of painting? Gompos took the painting in his hand with a puzzled face and spread it out on the table again. When his eyes fell on the painting again, he was suddenly stunned. Although the painting just now was called the Winter Plum Blossom Painting, there were rocks and winter plum blossoms, but no plum blossoms. However, this painting was different now. The slightly black flower bud was surrounded by white, like a blooming plum blossom. Whether it was in terms of appearance or artistic conception, it was a level higher than before. Oh my God, how did you do it? Gompos had studied painting for many years and had seen many world-famous painters. However, it was the first time he had seen such a magical painting. It was simply a magic painting. He Lizzie was also dumbfounded. He couldn't understand how the plum blossoms in this painting had bloomed. Was this a painting or a magic trick? He cried, I protest. This is not a painting. This is magic. The protest is invalid. This is Mr. Qin's magical way of painting. Gompos glared at He Lizzie and then said formally, I will now give the score. Mr. Qin's Winter Plum Blossom painting is 95 points. In this round, Huaxia wins. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a thunderous applause. All the Huaxia people cheered. Victory! We won again. The fake Japanese lost. Long live Qin Haodong. Long live Qin Haodong. If you don't court death, you won't die. Isn't it good to get 1 point? Now you've completely lost. Yagyu Hirai slammed his fist on the table and cursed, damn it. What a stupid thing this guy has done. Chiba Mieko's face was pale. She had just had a hunch that He Lizzie would lose, but she hadn't expected that Qin Haodong would win in this way. She really couldn't imagine how magical this young man was. He had won the competition with just a breath. He Lizzie, who was on the stage, looked pale. At this time, he was full of regret. Wasn't it good to get 1 point? Why did he have to be greedy? Now he had lost in a mess. Qin Haodong stepped in front of him and said, how about it? What else do you have to say now? Of course, Lizzie didn't want to admit defeat. However, the referee had already given the result. He really couldn't think of a reason to refute it. As a Huaxia person, you have forgotten your ancestors. You have a traitor as your father. Huaxia cultivated you, but now you return the kindness with ingratitude. The more Qin Haodong spoke, the angrier he became. His voice became sharper and sharper. Finally, he said coldly, since you have lost, hand over your hands. Don't touch Huaxia's traditional painting ever again. Dr. Qin is right. Hand over your hands. You don't deserve to draw Huaxia's traditional painting anymore. You have a traitor as your father. You have forgotten your ancestors. You are a despicable man. You deserve it. The audience below the stage was agitated. They already hated this despicable traitor in front of them. Lizzie quickly put his hands behind his back and said with a frightened face, "Don't come over. I'm telling you, this is a legal society. I am a neon person now. If you cut off my hands, it will cause international disputes. Don't worry, I won't cut off your hands. It will be too bloody in front of so many people." After that, he patted Lizzie's shoulder gently with an amiable expression. Lizzie breathed a sigh of relief. This toy boy's words were fierce, but he was still afraid of his identity. Huaxia people were still afraid of neon people. Chapter 268. He wanted to raise his hand to wipe the cold sweat off his forehead, but he was horrified to find that he couldn't move his hands. He couldn't even lift them. "Bastard, what did you do to me? Why can't my hands move all of a sudden?" Lizzie screamed with a horrified expression. As a painter, he knew the importance of his hands. Without them, he would be no different from a good-for-nothing. "I don't know. Everyone is watching. I didn't do anything to you, unlike you who had already prepared the knife to chop off your hands." Qin Haodong smiled more brightly and continued, "But I'm a doctor. I can give you a diagnosis now. You were too emotional after losing the game just now, which led to serious muscle weakness in your arms. You can't use your hands anymore." "No, it's impossible. My hands are fine." Lizzie roared crazily and tried to reach for the brush on the table next to him. But no matter how hard he tried, he could no longer pick up a brush. "God, why are you doing this to me? You can't do this to me. I still need to paint in the future. I still need to paint." Qin Haodong sneered and said, "It's very kind of God not to kill a shameless person like you who takes the enemy as your father and deceives your ancestors." Lizzie calmed down a little and suddenly realized that all this must have something to do with Qin Haodong. He knelt down on the stage, hugged Qin Haodong's thigh and cried, "I know I was wrong. Please let me go this time. I'm from Huaxia. My name is Lizzie, not Koyama Lizzie. As long as you can restore my hands, I will immediately give up my neon citizenship and return to Huaxia. I will work for Huaxia and win glory for Huaxia." Qin Haodong sneered and said, "You think too much. What do you think Huaxia is? Is it a place where you can come and go as you please? Huaxia will not accept a shameless person like you. It's fine if you don't want it, but please heal my hands." Lizzie kowtowed like a chicken eating rice and knelt on the stage, begging bitterly. He knew the importance of his hands. If he really became useless, he would never have a good time in neon. Qin Haodong said, "There's an old saying in Huaxia. I don't know if you still remember it. The evils you bring upon yourself are the hardest to bear. I really can't, I beg you, I'll kowtow to you, I beg you, you must cure my hand." Lizzie begged on the stage, and the Huaxia audience felt very happy. This shameful traitor finally got what he deserved. Yagyu Hirai's face was livid. Lizzie was now a neon national. He was crying and kneeling there, which was a disgrace to neon. He said to a neon warrior beside him, "Go and take him down. Don't embarrass yourself here." The neon samurai answered and quickly stepped onto the stage. He grabbed Lizzie's shoulder and dragged him out of the venue. Looking at the miserable He Lizzie, Qin Haodong shook his head. He had brought this upon himself. People like him, who could even betray their ancestors and people, would not have a good end in Neon. Once they lost their value, they would be worse than dogs. At the end of the game, Gompos left the scene, and Qin Haodong also turned and walked down the stage. At this time, there was a burst of cheers, and everyone was cheering for his performance. After returning to the stage, Tang Qingji was the first to greet Qin Haodong. He bowed deeply to Qin Haodong. "Mr. Tang, what are you doing?" Qin Haodong quickly reached out and helped him up. Tang Qingji said excitedly, "Little brother Qin, you've helped me a lot today and saved the face of Huaxia. You deserve this bow from me." Qin Haodong said, "As a descendant of Huaxia, it's my duty to do something for Huaxia." "You don't have to do this, Boss Tang." After they sat down again, Tang Qingji asked again, "Little brother Qin, your move just now was really beautiful, but I really don't understand. How did you get the last plum blossom kung fu?" Qin Haodong smiled slightly and said, "It's just a little trick. It's not worth mentioning." Of course, he couldn't tell the truth. He had just used green with genuine qi to change the color of the ink, which was beyond the art of painting. On the Neon side, Yagyu Hirai was so angry that his eyes turned red. He whispered, "I must kill this Huaxia man." Now they had lost 3 games in a row. According to the best of 5 rules, they had lost the competition. All of this was caused by Qin Haodong. To be precise, they had carefully prepared for so long, but they had lost to one person. No wonder they were angry. "We should have gotten rid of this man yesterday," Chiba Mieko said, "but it's too late now. With so many people watching, we can't act rashly." Yagyu Hirai knew that she was right. He took a deep breath and suppressed his anger. He turned to a young man next to him and said, "Yagyu Shizukumo, it's your turn in the next game. For the honor of our Neon country and our Yagyu family, you have to win this game. Do you hear me?" "Yes, young master." Yagyu Shizukumo bowed his head and then stepped onto the stage. 2 Neon attendants followed him closely, carrying an antique Huaxia guqin in their hands. After getting on the stage, he said proudly to Qian Duo, "In the 4th game, Neon will challenge Huaxia's guqin." Qian Duo looked at the list in his hand and said, "You said that you would challenge guqin in the 4th game, but it's not easy to determine who will win and who will lose in music. How will you judge the winner?" Since Neon was the challenger this time, Huaxia fully developed its style. All the challenge methods were proposed by Neon, and Huaxia accepted all of them. As for the 4th game, guqin, the program only said that it would be a challenge, but there was no clear explanation of the method. Yagyu Shizukumo said, "That's easy. I just need to play. As long as someone from Huaxia can listen to me, they will win. Otherwise, Neon will win. What kind of competition is this?" Qian Duo looked puzzled. Not only him, but the audience also did not understand what the Neon people were doing. Would they win by listening to him play a song? Everyone knew how to listen to music. Was there a need to compete? You don't need to ask too much. Just do as I say. Yagyu Shizukumo found a chair and sat down. He asked someone to place the guqin in front of him. Qian Duo turned to look at Gao Fengwen and Lang Sanyuan and asked, "Neon has proposed this kind of challenge. Can we accept it?" Although they knew that Yagyu Shizukumo's challenge was definitely not that simple, they could not back down now. Moreover, Lang Sanyuan had always been proud. Qin Haodong had just won 3 games in a row. Now it was finally his chance to show off. He said, "No problem. I've already said that no matter what kind of challenge they propose, we will accept it." Gao Fengwen did not know anything about music. Since Lang Sanyuan had agreed, he naturally could not say anything more. Lang Sanyuan said again, "I don't need to deal with this level of players in person. My disciple can do it." He turned to a young man in his 20s and said, "Li Mu, you go." "Yes, teacher." Li Mu stepped onto the stage and sat opposite Yagyu Shizukumo. Yagyu Hirai and Chiba Mieko secretly breathed a sigh of relief when they saw that it was not Chin Haodong. They were now faintly afraid of this young man. They had just lost 3 games in a row to Chin Haodong. They were really afraid that he would go on the stage again this time. On the stage, Yagyu Shizukumo glanced at Li Mu and said, "Huaxia man, are you ready?" Li Mu said, "We can start at any time." At this time, he was extremely confused. He had been learning the guqin from Lang Sanyuan since he was 5 years old. Now, he could be regarded as a small success. He did not understand why the neon would ask him to listen to music. Yagyu Shizukumo sneered. His slender fingers gently plucked the guqin. The clear sound of the guqin immediately rang out. The sound seemed to come from the depths of ancient times, piercing people's hearts. An expert could tell whether he was good or not. Although everyone did not like the neon people, they had to admit that Yagyu Shizukumo played the guqin really well. He was playing the famous Huaxia song, High Mountain and Running Water. As his fingers moved, the clear sound flowed out, making everyone present feel as if they were in the middle of mountains and rivers. Some people even closed their eyes and were fascinated. This neon man had a deep attainment. Lang Sanyuan was a master of the guqin, so he immediately heard that Yagyu Shizukumo's level was not lower than his. Fortunately, this guy did not propose to compete with him. Otherwise, he would not be sure of winning. In contrast, listening to music was much easier. This kind of song could be listened to for 3 days and 3 nights without any problem. While he was secretly rejoicing on this side, Li Mu knew his own suffering. This song of high mountains and flowing water was no different to other people's ears. It brought a kind of extremely comfortable enjoyment, but to his ears, it was a kind of torture. Since the music sounded, Li Mu felt that his blood was boiling and rushing to his head. What's going on? He had never encountered such a situation after playing music for so long. He suddenly panicked and tried to control his body, but he could not. A lot of blood rushed to his head, making his face redder and redder. He felt that his head was going to explode. Ah! In just a dozen seconds, Li Mu let out a scream, fell on the stage, and fainted. What's going on? Lang Sanyuan was enjoying the high mountain and running water with his eyes squinted. Suddenly, he saw his disciple fall down. He was shocked. Chin Haodong's pupils suddenly shrank. He had already understood what Yagyu Shizukumo was playing. This neon man actually knew the killing skill of sound. The so-called killing skill of sound was to change the human body's function through music, and it could even kill people invisibly. Fortunately, the neon man's attainment was not too high. Otherwise, Li Mu would have been dead. At this time, the medical staff immediately rushed to the stage and carried Li Mu down. Gao Fengwen was also somewhat confused. Li Mu looked healthy. Why did he suddenly fall down? He said to Chin Haodong, "Dr. Chin, what's going on?" Yagyu Shizukumo, who was on the stage, showed a trace of pride and said to the audience, "You Huaxia people are really sick men of East Asia. You're too weak to even listen to a song. There are 2 more chances. Who's next?" The audience suddenly boiled up. Huaxia people hated the words "sick men of East Asia" the most. Modern Huaxia was no longer the weak country it used to be. They could no longer bear the humiliation brought by these words. Neon man, you're shameless. Have you forgotten that you've lost 3 games in a row? Don't be complacent, Neon man. You're bound to lose this game, President Lang. Teach this neon man a lesson. Let him see who is the sick man of East Asia. Lang Sanyuan was not a warrior, nor did he know the killing skill of sound. At this time, he did not understand what Yagyu Shizukumo was playing. However, when he saw many people shouting his name, he could only bite the bullet and go on the stage. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.